What would Yeshe do?
Produced by Yeshe Studio.
I'm Lindsay Kimura.
And I'm Edward Reed. What Would Yeshe Do is a podcast dedicated to Yeshe Tsogyal, the Mother of Tibetan Buddhism. This is part 2 of the interview with Kess Frey.
Kess Frey is a longtime student of Eastern and Western philosophy. His spiritual teachers include Lama Anagarika Govinda,
Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche,
Swami Amar Jyoti,
and Father Thomas Keating.
Kess currently offers introductory centering prayer workshops, facilitates prayer groups and silent retreats, and is active in prison ministry. Kess's desire to write came spontaneously in his late teens when he awoke in the middle of the night feeling charged with energy and experiencing a flow of ideas and inspiration in his consciousness. He didn't know where this was coming from, but was uplifted by it and has been drawn to writing ever since. This inspiration is a gift that has continued to guide him from within, giving meaning, depth, and purpose to his life. Kess believes that such inner guidance is there for everyone, if we'll simply take time to slow down and be receptive to it, and that we are all connected to the divine source of life and creation in the deepest center of our being, one together in the love, truth, and freedom of non-created reality or God. Coming from this inspiration, Kess has written books such as Bridge Across Troubled Waters, Centering Prayer in the Theological Divide, The Creation of Reality, The Will of Divine Love, Centering Prayer and Spiritual Psychology, Human Ground, Spiritual Ground, Paradise Lost and Found, a reflection on centering prayer's conceptual background, Centering Prayer and Rebirth in Christ on the Tree of Life, The One Who Loves Us, Centering Prayer and Evolving Consciousness, and Satsang Notes of Swami Amar Jyoti.
In the second part of this episode, Kess actually leads me through meditation working with red Tara. And so, without further ado, let's get to that interview, shall we?
Let's do it.
And well, I was reflecting on why did I give you the wrong mantra, and I think that it was not done consciously, or intentionally at the time.
Yeah.
But I think the reason is that this particular mantra is not for the general public.
Okay.
For a starter mantra.
Right.
It's more of like I had been doing the Vajra Guru mantra for 12 years before I received it.
Yeah.
And so what I would recommend would be for people that are starting to work with the Vajra Guru mantra and to read the biography of Yeshe Tsogyal, the Enlightenment of Yeshe Tsogyal, first, so that they can establish a conscious sense of her presence, who she was and who she is. And then, after they've been doing some other practices, there'd be a point at which it would be appropriate to introduce them to this mantra. Now, I'll give you the mantra privately.
Okay.
It's it's very simple.
But if I'm teaching, don't give it first.
I didn't want to record it, though.
Oh, okay.
So if you pause the recording,
Sure.
I'll tell you what it is. So the mantra that's done at the beginning of the practice also has mudras that go with it, and it has to do with body, speech, and mind. The throat chakra is speech, of course. And so it's done like this. It's Om, Ah, Hum.
H-U-N-G?
H-U-N-G. Om, Ah, Hum. And those are the first 3 syllables of the Vajra Guru mantra. The Vajra Guru mantra is Om, Ah, Hum, Vajra Guru, Padma, Siddhi, Hum. Well, sometimes I make mistakes, and there's a reason for it.
Yeah,
see?
yeah.
And, I mean, I'm just into sharing things, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that my higher self or my guidance affected my memory and caused me to give you the wrong mantric formula. Because it's not, at this point, to be given out indiscriminately.
Right.
It was given out in the Yeshe Tsogyal empowerment I went to, Namkadrim, this teacher here, he was the Lama that was doing it. He gave out the Yeshe Tsogyal mantra to everybody at the same time. When a mantra is a secret mantra, it's given out where the guru whispers it in the left ear of the chela, or the disciple, 3 times. And only they hear it. And they're not supposed to divulge it to anybody else. And one of the reasons for that, and you might want to consider this, if you receive that mantra, a mantra, and you keep it within your soul, and you keep repeating it, and you do a sadhana with it, a visualization, like, you know, the one that goes with the Yeshe Tsogyal mantra, that creates a lot of power and energy. If you let it out, you lose some of your energy that you have built up.
I've noticed that every time I give away things. Yeah.
You lose some of that.
Yeah.
But it's an act of compassion, you know, to share it so someone else can benefit.
Right.
So you might want to just work with it secretly and privately by yourself for a given period of time, and then at some time you might intuitively sense now it's time to share it, you know, wanting to relate to Yeshe Tsogyal as a spiritual guide, and so forth. But you need to be selective as to who you give it to, because you don't want to waste this. This is something very precious, so you don't want to waste it. And I think that's the reason why it's not to be just given out to the general public indiscriminately or anonymously.
Right.
You know, like to be put on a podcast or something, because you don't know who is going to get it. Now, I don't understand if that would do any harm. I can't see how it would. That's why I was trying to give it to you.
Right.
But higher wisdom than me, than Kess, told Kess, no, Kess, don't do this. So I listened to that. It's not me, it's something that's guiding me.
Yeah.
You follow me? You know, there's a difference between the man and the teacher. You may have heard of the Tibetan teacher Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who was very notorious and well known, and had a major influence in bringing Tibetan Buddhism into the West, into this country particularly. And he was known for drinking and smoking and loose morals, so forth. And there was an attendant, a personal attendant that he had, who, you know, was like his footman. You know, he helped him get dressed. Trungpa was paralyzed on one side of his body because he'd been in a drunken car accident in England before he came to the United States, and so he needed help. You know, so this person was with him all the time, and Trungpa drank a lot, and this guy. And this was published in the Tricycle magazine, if you're familiar with that. I don't know if it's still out in print, but it's a magazine of American Buddhism. This story was put in there. That's how I heard about it. Nobody, you know, told me verbally or anything like that. So it's not a secret kind of a thing. But this guy was noticing how drunk and fun-loving Trungpa was all the time, and he started to lose respect for him and question as to whether or not he was really a legitimate qualified guru, because the guy was just partying and carrying on and all that. And he was up in the room, you know, and he was going to help Trungpa get undressed to go to bed, and Trungpa had been drinking and everything, and Trungpa suddenly just stopped, looked him right in the eyes, and he said to him, "You have to distinguish between the man and the teacher." you're judging me as the man because of my behavior that you see. But I'm still a teacher too. So, it's an interesting thing to share.
Yeah.
Not to judge, in other words. A lot of people condemned Trungpa because he did not live up to their expectations of what a holy person or a guru was supposed to be.
Right.
He did all the stuff they're not supposed to do.
Right.
But one of the reasons he did that was because he wanted to let people know that you could still drink and smoke and party or carry on, and you can still be spiritual and meditate. It's not a prerequisite to be pure in terms of the physical stuff, though obviously that helps a lot. And a person could be handicapping themselves by drinking and smoking and having loose morals and so forth. For most people, that's just going to make you worse. It's not going to serve you.
Yeah.
But he was at a state where it really didn't matter because he was beyond that. And I saw him, I had some private meetings with him when he first came to the country, when he was up in Berkeley, in the Bay Area where I lived, 1969, 1970, where he would be up there teaching and he'd be drinking a six-pack of beer and chain-smoking Marlboros, and some of the people would just walk out. They'd say, "This guy, this is an insult," because he wasn't meeting their expectations. But his mind was completely clear, and everything he said made perfect sense. And I was able to see that it didn't matter what he was doing on the level of Malkuth, He was still coming from that high place. But a lot of people, they couldn't accept that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a similar, the head of the cult that I was in for a long time, people used to say that you should be able to distinguish between, and they'd say his earthly name, and his greatly honored frater so-and-so name, that he was the head of the order, by that they're two different people. There's the teacher and the man has the dishonest business practices and snuck semen into everybody's drink and, did all these horrible things. And so what you're saying has a ring of sourness to me because of the 18 years that I spent under him. But I also, one of my longtime teachers, Gordon Beam, also very much respected, Sharum Trungpa. Am I saying it right?
Tsogyal.
Trungpa.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, he was basically just drinking and smoking. He wasn't stealing money or being overtly dishonest or leading multiple lives.
He was having, multiple sexual partners.
Right.
Women.
Who were probably aware of each other.
Who were enamored of him.
Right, yeah.
He was a fairly young man. He was like 30 when I met him.
Yeah.
And he looked very young, very vital.
Yeah.
But because of his lifestyle, he died at the age of 45.
I wonder, you were talking about people who are yogis in India that then are brought into the Western world and then have the temptations of all the fame and all the fit. Would you think that would apply here, or is it a different sort of thing?
Well, it's a hard thing to call.
Yeah, it's you don't want to
judge
judge
someone. There's no way of proving one way or the other.
A holy man. Personally,
based on my limited personal contacts with him as a teacher and teaching experiences I had with him in dreams, I think he was an enlightened being.
Yeah.
And another holy man who was very highly revered, named Colin Rinpoche, who was the total opposite in outward behavior of what Chogyam Trungpa was, came to this country. The Dalai Lama referred to Colin Rinpoche as the Milarepa of the 20th century. And you couldn't give a higher compliment than that. Milarepa was a great yogi of Tibet. In fact, here's a picture of him. He's got a very interesting story, but we won't go on that side trip. Colin Rinpoche was an ascetic, supposedly. That has been brought into question, actually. I just remembered, since he came to the West. But by a woman who was his translator. She wrote a book. said that she did have sexual relations with him, but he was the model ascetic who went off and meditated, perfected his meditation in caves for 12 years, and just a very high being. And he was of equal stature to the Karmapa in the Karjupta order. The Karmapa was the head of the order. And he also could do the black hat ceremony, which the Karmapa did. He came to the United States, and I got an empowerment from one of his disciples for doing a Chenrezig Zig practice, and then I took refuge with him at a public teaching he gave. And then I went to a smaller gathering. It was like at a house, and the place was packed with people. And this was at the Vajradhatu. That's where the name of the Trungpa's centers were. He had Vajradhatus all over the country. And there's one here, not very far from this house, the Shambhala is what they call it now. Trungpa came out with a book called Shambhala, the Path of the Warrior, Sacred Path of the Warrior. And so they adopted that name. This was in the earlier days. So Colin Rinpoche was there, and someone asked him a question that was very critical of Trungpa. He was saying, he was paying his obeisance and his respect to Colin Rinpoche, who's real squeaky clean, outwardly, to all appearances. And he says, well, what about this teacher who like Trungpa, who drinks and he carries on with women and he smokes and he does all these worldly things? What about him? Shouldn't he be kicked out of the order? And through a translator, because Colin Rinpoche didn't speak any English, Colin Rinpoche, it's often very difficult for sentient beings to understand Buddha activity. That was his response to that. And that confirmed my own opinion and my own feelings.
Yeah.
But he's a much higher authority than I am.
Yeah.
But it's hard to call. It's a very subjective kind of a judgment.
Yeah.
Because
we're not there.
We're not there. We're human beings.
Yeah.
And no matter how high somebody is, they can still regress.
Right.
As long as they're an individual consciousness.
Yeah.
They can still regress. And they're in a human body. So like Dion Fortune in that book, The Mystical Kabbalah, she says that she only completely trusts Kabbalistic teachers that are not in the physical form, because they aren't subject to the limitations of human nature. They don't have those temptations.
Yeah.
As long as we're human, we can still regress, and it's a self-delusion to think otherwise. And many fallen gurus and yogis or Western teachers have succumbed to that because, it's very seductive for the ego to think that it's perfected and that it's enlightened and it's above everybody else, and especially when you've got people bowing and scraping to you and worshiping you. And that is part of the Eastern tradition. It's not really part of the Western tradition.
Right.
At least it's not supposed to be. And I think for good reason.
Yeah.
So anyway, the whole thing of my explanation about that I gave the wrong mantra kind of led into this. And if people work with the Vajra Guru mantra, Yeshe Tsogyal and Padmasambhava are one. So wherever the one is, the other one is. And the Vajra Guru mantra is well known. It's very powerful, and it works the different centers. And I told you yesterday my idea of the different centers that go with the different syllables, and I don't know if that's completely correct. I know that Om, Ahum is the head, the throat, and the heart. And the Vajra, I thought was the solar plexus, but it might be the sacral center.
Right.
Because that's where the sexual power is. And the Vajra is kind of like the ultimate phallic symbol,
Yeah.
At least if you're male.
Right.
But the Vajra, and of course there's like Vajra Yogini, who is a great the deity in Tibetan Buddhism.
And
So
she carries the Vajra.
yeah, and Yeshe is a master of the Vajra as well. So it's not simply masculine or male, a thing for men, but I think it may be the sacral thing, Vajra, and then the Guru could be the solar plexus, and then the Padma, that's the lotus, that has to be the heart center. Vajra, Guru, Padma, Siddhi, the cities are the powers, that's the throat chakra again, and then Hung is back into the throat, into the heart, because Om Hung, and Hung is a harmonizing syllable. It integrates things.
In the one that my dad did, Hung was for the throat, and in the Lotus Born, there's one point when Padmasambhava is on his journey, and one of the people he meets takes him into her throat, and it gives him an empowerment with the word Hung. So I thought that was interesting also.
Well, and there's like a mantra, Om Hung, but Om Ah Hung, when you do that, it represents body, and your body is the entire universe. Speech, and that's the word of truth, the Dharma, and Hung is the mind, the consciousness. Om Ah Hung, that's often done at the beginning of a practice. And so I gave you Om Ah. You could relate to Yeshe Tsogyal using that syllable.
Yeah.
But it's not the same mantra that was given by Namkadriman at the empowerment.
Right.
So we're clear on that. And when you get to know someone, and if you feel that they're engaging with Yeshe and they're sincere, and your own inner guidance will tell you if it would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Because if you give that out, you're giving part of your energy out, which is what I did in giving it to you. But if it's going to bear good fruit, there's plenty of reason to do it.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody you don't know what it's going to do.
Right.
Now, again, this is my interpretation of why I did that. So.
Yeah, I just referencing back the, I came from a very secretive group, and they had all kinds of reasons why this is so secret, and this is even more secret, and this is the most secret thing of all, and if you should ever reveal this, well, then, good luck, and so with the Esoteric Nerd podcast, I'm completely flipping all of that upside down.
Sticking your middle finger up.
Basically.
That's what Aleister Crowley did. He broke his vows, but if he hadn't, Fortune wouldn't have been able to write the Mystical Kabbalah.
Exactly, yeah.
She points that out. There were places where she completely disagreed with him, but he made public stuff that she wouldn't have dared to.
Yeah. Since
it was already public, she was cool with it.
Yeah. And really the only thing that, that isn't written in books are, the teachings that were developed and the specific nuances of the teachings that were developed in the group I was with, as well as the experiences and the first-hand accounts of what it was like and what it was like going through this and that. Because Crowley published everything already. But yeah.
So in a way, we owe him a debt of gratitude.
We do.
And
we were just talking about people.
Bad boy.
Yeah, we could judge him as a man, but as a teacher, yeah. Well, even as a teacher, he changed some things. But no, I have respect for Crowley, but I'm glad that Paul Foster Case and a few other people, Regardi too, were there to, say, okay, well, that's great, Crowley, but let's also include, the original teachings before you got to them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, having both is...
Well, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there's this thing that's called the Nundro practice. Have you ever heard of that? Well, the Nundro practice is a purification thing. It works with the Bodhisattva named Vajrasattva. And this is big time Vajrasattva. And there's like 108 syllable mantra for Vajrasattva, and then there's shorter mantras for Vajrasattva, fortunately. I've never practiced the 108 syllable one. If you do the Nundro, they're in different schools, presented in different ways, but it's basically a thing that takes generally about 3 years to do, and you have to give it 2 or 3 hours a day. So this is a pretty serious practice. It involves doing 108,000 repetitions of that mantra, 108 1,000 full body prostrations and visualizations and repeating this whole liturgy to yourself. For some of the most secret practices within Tibetan Buddhism, you will not be given that empowerment until you've completed the Nundro. So they keep that really locked and sealed.
Very interesting.
For whatever reasons.
Yeah.
And the point is, it's supposed to purify you, and whatever your karma is, it purifies your karma, and then you're capable of receiving the full benefits of that empowerment in that practice. So it sort of guarantees that your karma is ripe for it.
Yeah.
I've never undertaken that because I got involved with centering prayer and other things. I mean, at one point in my life, I was considering becoming a Lama myself, because I really loved this tradition, Lama Govinda, and so forth. And then I thought, well, maybe in my next life, I gave a $500 donation to the building of the Odeon community up in Northern California that Tarthong Tukul established. And this is a huge thing. I mean, they have a whole Tibetan community there. And they have everything going on there, and it's kind of secret and self-contained. They don't advertise it very much. You could find out about it if you wanted to visit it, through the Nyingma Center in Berkeley, which the Dharma Publishing is connected to. I thought, well, maybe in my next birth, let me be incarnated. I'll be born in the Odeon community, and then I'll grow up and I'll do that then,
That's kind of, I've thought about that too, as far as becoming vegan and becoming a yogi in the second half of this life. Then maybe I'll be born into a family of vegan yogis next life instead of cheeseburger eating.
Yeah. Well, now, I mean, from where I'm at now, I whatever is right for my further spiritual evolution.
Yeah, that's for the higher self, not the lower self.
That's the higher self, call the shot.
Yeah.
Not Kessie here.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a nice thought, at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I didn't feel quite ready to make the commitment. Yeah. And also, around that time, or shortly after that, I met this Swami Amarjyoti from India, and I became his student. And I was with him for 12 years and lived in his ashram in the Rocky Mountains as a hermit for 2 years. And he allowed me to continue my Tibetan practices. He approved of that, totally.
Yeah.
He was a very universal teacher, though he had very much a Hindu, cultural background, but he was open to the obvious fact that you can walk on the spiritual journey through any particular tradition, or you don't have to have a tradition. You can start out as an atheist, seeking the truth, and there are ways that he can guide you to it. That was what he was saying. It doesn't matter. He'll take you wherever you're at, as long as that's what you want, is to grow spiritually. Yeah. And he was very impressive, but he also turned out to have some flaws. Another controversy. So what I'd like to do, I wrote down a few notes here, is I'm going to share with you some other practices that are related to Tara, and through Tara to Yeshe Tsogyal. And then we'll do some of this.
Okay.
Well, again, the book is called The Enlightenment of Yeshe Tsogyal. I might have said it was the life and enlightenment of her, but it's called The Enlightenment of Yeshiyam Tsogyal by Tarthong Tukul, translator, Dharma Publishing. And I'm going to give you this piece of paper.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So you'll have this all written down. And the Nyingma Center in Berkeley was the place he first established. And then I mentioned about the Vajraguru mantra, Om Ahum Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hung, and this is what I'm thinking now about it. And there are what they're called Om and Hung, or seed syllables. Now, there's what's called the 5 Buddha families, the 5 wisdoms, the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. Each one of these has a seed syllable. So out of that seed syllable comes the entire lineage of what's in that particular Buddha family. And also according to the mythology or the history of Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism anyway, there's supposed to be 5 Buddha incarnations in a particular cycle, or whatever, big cycle, which involves the 4 yugas, the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. And we're supposed to be in the Iron Age now, which is an age of spiritual darkness, where there are more obstacles to pursuing enlightenment. There's more distractions. And I think if we look at the world, that's validated, because there's just, in my lifetime, I've seen the amount of distractions that are there for young people multiplied by several powers.
Well, with the phones everybody looks at first thing in the morning and last thing before they go to sleep now, it's crazy. Yeah.
So there's more obstacles than there's in this yuga. Well, the first Buddha is called Vajradhara, I think. Again, I might be spacing out here. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong, but there's a mandala. So the center of the mandala is white, and the syllable is Om. That book I gave you by Lama Govinda called The Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism, you might not know where it is.
I have it, yeah.
That has all of this in detail in it, because this is what I had to study to learn the puja ritual that I do. And before I could even start studying that, I had to study the earlier teachings of Buddhism. The Lama Govinda school integrates all the schools. So you start out with the Theravadan teachings of Sakyamuni Buddha, the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, and the basic meditation. And then you get into the Mahayana school, which is the path of compassion. The first school, you're just working for your own liberation. When you go into the Mahayana, you're not just working for your own liberation, but you make the commitment to work for the liberation of all sentient beings. So that's the path of compassion. But the first one's a prerequisite, because a drowning person can't save a drowning person.
Right.
So until you're liberated, you're not in much of a position to help others. But to whatever degree, we've made progress. We can help people, but we're still struggling ourselves.
Right.
And then the third thing is the Vajrayana, which is simply a system of spiritual practices to expedite our growth. And there's a whole bunch of them. There's the Mantrayana, which is sound, and the visualizations, the imagery, working with the chakras, working with the breath, and the deity worship, and there's just all kinds of stuff there. So there's a whole system that comes out of each one of these seed syllables. Vairocana is the correct name. Vairocana is the correct name of the Buddha that's in the center of the mandala. It goes with the syllable Om, and that's the path of universality, of oneness. Some schools switch the center between Vairocana and the next one, which is called Aksobhya. And that's right underneath. It's the east, but it's right underneath the center. The color is blue. And this is called the mirror-like wisdom that impartially reflects the nature of reality. And it's also referred to as shunyata, or the wisdom of emptiness. And there's this famous line from the Prajnaparamita where it says, form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. So it has to do with realizing the insubstantiality of all created phenomena. And physics has now proven that. You know, even though like I can pound on the arm of this chair or on my face or anything else, and physically it really is pretty convincing that this is solid because it gives resistance. But on the quantum level, it really isn't solid.
Right.
What it is there's these little tiny force fields which are pushing against each other that create the appearance of solidity, but there's more space and emptiness in those than there is actual substance. But that's so small, you know, we can't begin to perceive it. But the enlightened consciousness does. So it's sort of like being able to really see through things, you might say. So the mirror-like wisdom, and that's the first goal, the wisdom of Aksobhya, and his mudra. I forgot to tell you, the mudra of Varakona is called the mudra of setting in motion the wheel of the law. This was the mudra that Sakyamuni Buddha made when he began his teaching, and it's like this. Setting in motion the wheel of the law. It's done in front of the heart center, and you do these two fingers and you join them like that.
Yeah.
So it's Om, and then the mantra for Aksobhya is Ah. And that's the earth-touching mudra. When the Buddha, you have to pretend I'm in a full lotus. He put his hand with the palm facing inward on the knee and touching the earth. And when Mara, who was the evil one, challenged his enlightenment, he did that mudra to call the earth up to witness through all his past lives to the present lives, to the truth of his enlightenment. So that's the mudra of Aksobhya. So a person that completely masters that wisdom is liberated from the wheel of birth.
I wanted to mention as an aside, when Kukai had learned the Vajrayana Buddhism in China and returned to Japan and began Shingon Buddhism, they asked him about the old ways of Japan, and they said, "Where do you stand on the Shinto spirits?" And he said, "Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun, who is the goddess of the universe, is a manifestation of Vairocana." And in that one statement, he allowed for Shinto to be part of the whole symphony of Vajrayana Buddhism in Shingon Buddhism. So that's very special to me up at Mount Koyasan.
That's part of the genius of both Buddhism and Christianity. Whatever culture these religions go into, they can assimilate the mythologies and the deities and the traditions of what's already there into their structure.
Yeah.
That's the only reason they became world religions. Because that's what the psyche of the people is ingrained with.
Right.
And it's already familiar to them. So rather than telling them, well, you got to throw all
Do a
that
completely
in the
different
toilet,
thing now, yeah.
and you have to adopt our cultural thing,
Right.
you're integrating it. And that's part of the... Lama Govinda wrote this.
Yeah.
That's part of the genius of Buddhism and also of Christianity, why they became world religions. A religion that can't do that is just going to stay, like Hinduism, primarily in one place.
Right.
It's hard to turn Americans into East Indians,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
Most of them don't want to become Tibetans. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Some try. But so we've got the first two wisdoms, the first Dhyani Buddhas, Varakana and Aksobhya. It's Om, white, and Ah, blue. And that's the mirror-like wisdom, which sees things the way they are. It's very objective. The third wisdom is very subjective. It's the opposite. It's complementary, in other words. The mudra is the opposite. It's the same thing, but the palm is facing outward. And this is called gesture of giving. The name of the Dhyani Buddha is Ratna Samhava. And Ratna means jewel. So this is the precious jewel. The color is yellow, gold. And the energy is the energy of love and compassion. Ratna Samhava. So it's called the equalizing wisdom. In terms of this universal oneness, all sentient beings are equal in their Buddha nature. And the love is more, to me, more of a Christian term, but the love or the compassion is what makes us all equal.
Right.
In love, there's no place for domination in love. Love is a self-giving of communion, interchange, and union. And it transcends all of the games, that the ego plays.
Yeah.
It's on a much higher spiritual plane, and it transcends good and evil completely. That's where Yeshe Tsogyal was coming from when, she was attacked. Or Jesus was when he was crucified.
Yeah.
So these represent 3 Buddhas that have already appeared on earth, supposedly. Now the next wisdom, the 4th wisdom, this was the wisdom of discrimination, the discriminating wisdom. These wisdoms build on each other, so you start in this system with the universal wisdom of Arcana, then you go to the mirror-like wisdom of Aksobhya, which is very objective and sort of impartial, impersonal. But then you come to the wisdom of what I would call the wisdom of love, or the wisdom of equality, of Ratna Samhava, which is the energy of compassion and love. And then that evolves further into the discriminating wisdom of Amitabha. Amitabha is the Buddha of infinite light. I would compare that to the limitless light.
Ein Sof Or, literally.
Ein Sof Or of the Kabbalah, yeah. And the unfortunate refers to the Ein Sof Or as the 3 veils of negative existence.
Mm-hmm. There's Ein, which is there is no, and Ein Sof, which is there is no limit, and then Ein Sof Or, which is there is no limit to the light.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know that.
Yeah. In modern Hebrew, Ein is used to mean there is no. So it's commonly used. Do we have everything we need? There's no bread. Ein Bohem. And then Ein Sof, Sofit, when they say Mem Sofit, it's the one that is closed and has a value of 600 instead of the one that's open and has a value of 40, because it's at the end of the word. It's at the finishing of the word. So Ein, there is no, end, and then Or. But it's
aura comes from that name.
Yeah, different,
Light.
But light or, and then Oriel, light of God. And then, I don't know, Aura, I didn't know it had a Hebrew origin, but they're probably related, for sure.
They might be.
Yeah.
So, Amitabha is the Buddha of infinite light, and this is the Buddha of our eon, or our period. Shakyamuni Buddha was the physical embodiment of Amitabha, and also Padmasambhava is an embodiment of Amitabha. So this is the Buddha family that we're primarily working from. The color is red, and the thing about the discriminating wisdom is that it is able to perceive both the universal relations of everything, but also all of the individual aspects and individual karmic connections of everything. So it discriminates, it nuances perfectly and completely everything. Like if someone with that consciousness looks at a particular soul, they would read that soul's karma and see all their past lives and everything going on with them and know all about why they are the way they are and what they need and what they don't need. It's a very divine kind of a perspective.
Yeah.
And so it's out of the energy of Amitabha that Avalokiteshvara or Chenrezig was born, the archetypal Bodhisattva. It's out of Amitabha that Tara came. Through Chenrezig, out of his tears of compassion, and out of that Yeshe Tsogyal came. So this is our Buddha family if we're relating to Yeshe Tsogyal and we're relating to Tara. We still are connected to the other ones, but this is the primary one.
Right.
And like Lama Govinda, he practiced something that was called the Dim Chog Tantra. That's what he was initiated into. And that is known as the Tantra of Great Bliss. And that also comes from Amitabha. Because it's not only infinite light, but it's infinite happiness. Infinite bliss. Infinite fulfillment. So when a person grows into this, they grow into a state which I was told by one of my spiritual guides years ago, that you shall become whole and complete in yourself alone. So just in yourself, by yourself, you will be whole and complete. And that is the state from which you can relate to others with compassion. Like Chogyam Trungpa once said, the only reason to relate to others is out of compassion. Because when you grow into the wholeness and completeness that is your true self, your Buddha nature or your true nature, you don't need anything from anybody outside of you. Yeah. Because you are whole and complete in yourself, you have everything that you could want and more already. So you're not needy.
Yeah.
In any way. I mean, you're going to, as a human being, you're going to have physical needs, of course, but you're not going to have emotional needs, social needs, or any of that. You transcend that. Ultimately, you will. But that's a state that we're aiming towards. It's not where we are now.
Right.
I would say that would be the state that a person who has grown into a full adept of Tippereth would be in. Where all of their centers are on the big tree of life. They're in the sphere of Tippereth beauty. They've transcended human nature, and they don't need to reincarnate in the human body to learn any more lessons or to work out any more karma, because they've completed the course.
Yeah. They
could choose to incarnate or be asked to, but only out of compassion to serve the divine plan. That'd be the only reason for it. Of course, if they did, then they would still have to go through the whole process of
learning,
born as a helpless infant and
right,
being subject to the wounding and everything that happens to us.
And maybe even regress.
Yeah, there's a danger. Because they would have to remember who they are at some point.
And that might give them a huge ego trip.
Yeah, they would have to go through the temptations and that every human being has to go through, even Jesus.
Yeah.
He had to be led out into the desert to go through the temptations.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's that. So it's not necessarily a rosy thing to do.
Right.
But out of love and compassion, and it may further our spiritual growth to do this. I don't know. It certainly is going to create positive karma if we use it right. But we could regress and we could screw up.
Yeah.
Make mistakes and succumb to the ego, to the false self. Because we have to overcome it again.
Yeah.
If we take on human life, it comes with the territory. There's no getting around that.
Right.
So that's why some people will say, well, become the adept and then make this your last incarnation. You don't have to mess with this anymore. Well, anyway, that's Something to think
that's
about.
one of the earlier Buddhas, though, right? That is the one who reincarnates until everybody's enlightened. Is that the fifth?
That's the Bodhisattva.
But the not the mirror mind or the
mirror-like wisdom frees us from the wheel of rebirth if we perfect it.
Oh, okay. So once you've gotten all of those 5, then you can be a lama, or then you can be a bodhisattva.
Well, a full bodhisattva. I mean, you would be a Buddha once you perfected the 5.
Okay. I see.
So there's many different degrees, in each of these things.
Yeah. But you want to start at the beginning. You were saying our main Buddha family that we're looking at is that 5th one, but we want to start with the first one.
It's the 4th one.
The 4th one.
It's the one of Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light.
The 4 wisdoms.
It's the discriminating. The 5th wisdom is of Moga City, is the name of the Buddha. The color is green. See, let me show you the mudras, and I'll say them on the seed syllables. It's Om, Hung, Trong, Hari, and this is the gesture of meditation. And the last one is Ah, and that's the one that he's doing. Ah, back to the throat chakra, and this is called the all-accomplishing wisdom. So once someone has evolved through all of those prior 4, then they have Buddha activity. That's the all-accomplishing wisdom. So that's karma-free action. It's the all-accomplishing wisdom. In other words, you can get the job done. You can, and I would say Christ would be an example of the ultimate bodhisattva in the West.
Yeah.
And there is reason, for me anyway, to connect that, because Amoga City is supposed to be Maitreya, the next Buddha, which is the Buddha that brings the teaching of love to humanity. And the name Maitreya means he whose name is kindness. And he's supposed to be born in the West. And the Buddha is recorded as having said that in 500 years, the next Buddha will appear in the West. But a lot of the Buddhists added another 0 onto that 500.
5,000, just to make it longer.
But to me, I think that Jesus Christ was the Buddha that was born in the West.
Yeah.
Now, Buddhists are not going to like that. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But as a person that's integrating mystical Christianity and Tibetan Buddhism, it's a good fit.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
And another good fit for me that I discovered is this. The 3 principal mysteries in Christianity that go with the 3 major feasts. Christmas, Epiphany, is the Feast of Divine Light. That's Amitabha. Easter is the Feast of Divine Love. That's Amitayas. This is the 3 here. This is Amitayas, the Buddha of infinite life. These are emanations of Amitabha. This is Amitabha. And then his 2 primary emanations are Amitayas and Chenrezig, or Avalokiteshvara. This is the Buddha of love and compassion. And so the 3 mysteries of Christianity are the mystery of divine light, divine life, Easter, divine love, Epiphany. The 3 major deities in this school of Tibetan Buddhism are Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light. Same thing as Christmas, Epiphany. Amitayas, the Buddha of infinite life. Same thing as Easter. Yeshe Tsogyal resurrected dead people. She was able to resurrect the dead, just like Jesus did. That's what they recorded. And Chenrezig / Avalokiteshvara, that's his Sanskrit name, he's the manifestation of divine love and compassion. Divine love is the feast of Pentecost, birth of the church. And the main teaching that Jesus brought that was new was the teaching of love and mercy and forgiveness. So I connect the three that way. It's a perfect fit for me.
Yeah.
Between them. They arose in completely different cultural contexts because Jesus was a Jew and a Kabbalist. And he came out of that tradition, which tradition of the prophets and what we know of the Old Testament and where the Kabbalah that we know now came from. And the Buddha came out of the Hindu, what we call the Hindu tradition of India. But there's a definite parallelism between them.
Would you say that Padmasambhava came out of the tradition of Buddhism?
Yeah.
So Nepal, he was in Nepal, right, at the time?
Yeah, the lake that he supposedly was manifested out of the lotus thing in the middle of a lake was in Nepal.
I have to go find that lake if it's still there.
I don't remember the name of it, but it's...
I'm sure someone will tell me.
It should be in your book,
yeah.
The Lotus Barn. So, anyway, that's a parallelism between these two major world religions.
Excuse me.
They are compatible, at least esoterically. They're not going to be compatible for...
On that exterior level.
On the exoteric level, or for people that are fundamentalists or who believe in the exclusivity of one as being the only
truth
thing that's right and the other one as being something less.
Yeah.
But on the deeper level, they're all pointing us towards something that transcends our ideas.
Yeah.
And our images and words and symbols.
I remember when we were at Mount Koyasan, where Shingon Buddhism has its heart. Right outside of the sacred area, there's a tea house, and we went there, and I overheard two, I think, Japanese businessmen talking, but they were speaking English, and one of them was saying, that they had a friend who came here and was very devout and got, seemed to be getting a lot out of this, and I said, "Aren't you a Christian?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, if you're a Christian, then go be a Christian. What are you doing here? This is for Buddhists." And I wasn't going to interrupt someone else's conversation, but it was kind of disheartening to hear like that so firmly, like just as a matter of fact, like if you're a Christian, be a Christian. This is for Buddhists. It's like, I don't feel that way at all. I wasn't raised that way. From the day I was born, I was a Christian Buddhist. So, what he's talking about is not compatible with my DNA,
Well, a lot of Buddhists have heard Christians put down Buddhism.
Right.
And so they assume that
it's a competition.
The perspective of all Christians.
Yeah.
And it's too bad.
Yeah.
It's too bad. But that's something that needs to be overcome. And only real education can accomplish that.
Yeah.
To realize that there is an esoteric aspect to both these traditions and that they are not mutually exclusive on the deeper level.
Yeah.
On the exoteric level, they're completely different. But
I got to a place where in the inner mysteries of at least the school I was in, the Golden Dawn School, there was a point on you wear this lamen and there's a little tiny white dot in the middle, and that was where you would locate yourself, your true self, and that later I was reading that the little, I believe it's red, there's a little red dot or a little red droplet that sits on top of the solar plexus in Tibetan Buddhism that is supposed to be the actual immortal soul, that when we die it goes out through the crown, and when it takes birth in someone else it comes through the crown and takes its place on top of the solar plexus. And I always connected that with the pink light that I would emanate, the compassionate healing light, and that it was neither west nor east, it was both, it was neither, it was truth. It was just expressing itself in two different worlds.
Well, the experiences that I've had that have been my major spiritual experiences, they have been free of anything that would tie them to a particular tradition.
Mm.
They've been experiences of energy and consciousness and a sense of the sacred and divine love, but there was nothing labeling them as
right. East
Buddhist
or West
or Christian or anything else.
Yeah. It's like that's all for the sake of communication amongst each other and community, the forms of the religion.
Yeah, and for introductory purposes, we need images and we need names and forms and all that.
Yeah.
But the problem is people get stuck in those things, and they identify the symbol with what the symbol represents.
Right.
And they never get to what it represents. They get too fixated on the symbol.
That makes sense.
And that's the exoteric
Yeah.
thing, And so for some people that's enough for them because they're not that interested in deeper spirituality. They're interested in living the drama of their human life as a personality and pursuing their desires that they have and so forth.
Yeah.
And they compartmentalize the different areas of their life in separate compartments. But if a person is wanting to live spiritually, you don't compartmentalize your spirituality. It has to be brought into everything we do, every relationship, every activity. It's part of everything.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And it takes work, to do that.
Yeah.
It does. Well, anyway, so this is something that you could do as a practice. You could start by saying Om Ahung, which is for the blessing and the purification of body, Om, speech in the throat, Ahung in your mind, in the heart. Then you could do the mudras for the Five Dhyani Buddhas, where you would go Om, Hung, Trong, Ri, Ah.
Does it matter right hand on top or left hand on top?
In the Tibetan tradition, it's right hand in the left.
Okay.
The left is considered feminine, it's the container. And the Chinese also do right and left. The Japanese do left and right. In Zen, they do left and right. Whatever feels right to you.
Yeah.
What you should do.
I think it's just the way Dogen remembered it when he went back to Japan.
I do.
Yeah. Maybe in that particular Soto temple he was in. Yeah.
He might have got a little dyslexia or something.
Well, now they recommend, because he also said put your left foot or put your right foot on your left thigh and then put your left foot on your right thigh. And of course that would make you kind of asymmetrical over time. So nowadays Zen Buddhists alternate and adhere to such a strict letter of the law of the 1200s.
Yeah, so it's the left is considered feminine and the right is considered masculine.
Okay.
And I know in Chi Gong, there's a difference between if you're a man or a woman. Chi Gong is a Taoist thing, it's related to Tai Chi. And I have a friend that's involved in teaching centering prayer who's sort of like a Tai Chi master. She's from Mexico. And she does these energy exercises at our silent retreats to help people ground the energy that builds up from being in silence and community and doing 4 to 5 hours of centering prayer every day. And if you're a man, with the right hand, you connect the thumb and the pointing finger, and then with the left hand, you connect the middle finger with the thumb, and you sit with your back straight, and then you curl your tongue up to the roof of your mouth. Now, you only do this when you're in a place where you are willing to absorb the energy that's in the environment. So you wouldn't do this in an airport or in some public place because it opens you to take in energy. But, okay, so if you're a man, you do that. If you're a woman, you do the opposite. If you're a woman...
Index finger on the left hand.
The left hand, it's thumb and index finger, and it's middle finger and thumb.
Interesting.
That's in Qigong.
Hmm.
And curl the tongue. The reason for curling the tongue is that there's like an energy circuit that goes up your spine in the back, and it goes through the head, and it goes down in the front. But the energy won't go down unless you connect it. When you put your tongue into the roof of your mouth, that connects the circuit to allow the energy to go down. If too much energy builds up in your head without going down, you're going to get a headache.
Mm. We were doing third eye work, and Lindsay got a headache, so maybe I'll suggest the curling the tongue.
Oh, it does wonders.
Yeah.
I mean, you can actually feel the energy going down your tongue.
Yeah.
It goes down and you can visualize it coming up in the front and going down in the back.
Mm.
Completes a circuit.
Yeah.
And then that's called the water wheel, or the mill wheel, in the Taoist tradition, the tradition of the Secret of the Golden Flower text, which is another, for me, a very important transmission text that I received when I was 21, I think I was 21 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I actually received the teachings of it through a dream.
I remember we recorded it, the story. I've been doing I've been reciting from that book, portions at the beginning of my podcast sometimes.
Oh, from that autobiographical writing?
From the Golden Flower.
Oh, from the Secret of the Golden Flower.
Yeah.
Do you have the version by Richard Wilhelm?
I believe so.
With Carl Jung's forward in it?
Yeah.
That's the one that I first got.
I think you actually might have given it to my dad, because it's an old book. I didn't buy it. So, someone else bought it and left it in my library.
Oh. Hardback?
No, it's a paperback. Yeah, I don't know. But I noticed, because I had a fire in August of 1998, so some of my books have, fire damage, and so it's one of those books. And so I was like, okay, this must be a book I inherited,
Yeah, that book is very nice. And it's a combination of Buddhist teachings and Taoist teachings. Lama Govinda was asked about the book, and he said that it had Tibetan influences in it.
Very cool.
As well as Taoist. Lama Govinda wrote a book on the I Ching, so he was very much into Taoism as well as Buddhism. And those are, of course, two non-theistic religions where you don't worship a god that's outside of you.
One thing that's very popular for people to write about in yoga magazines is that other people shouldn't mix Indian and Chinese things, that's ignorant and stupid. So it's really good to hear these things, and to hear that Taoism and Buddhism and Hinduism and Tibetan and Indian can all complement and go together.
Well, I would compare that type of thinking to the same kind of thinking that discriminates against you're either a Buddhist or you're a Christian.
Right, exactly.
It's dividing things, and it's exoteric thinking.
Yeah.
It's not esoteric thinking at all. Yeah, so Bodhidharma, he was an East Indian, so he came out of the Indian culture. He was enlightened. He's considered the founder of Zen Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
He went to China. He lived in China and introduced his teaching to Chinese people, and they called it Chan Buddhism. And then at some point, it went from China to Japan. So it went...
That was Dogen.
Dogen, yes. Yeah. Dogen Zenji, or whatever his name was.
Ehiye Dogen, yeah.
So it embraced, all three of those very different cultures.
Yeah.
Padmasambhava is another example because, as I mentioned yesterday, it said he went like a honeybee from one flower, center of teaching, to another, gathering all the wisdom that was available.
Yeah.
Integrating it. Before he went to Tibet, he was invited by the king because they were having a hell of a time trying to establish Buddhism there, because the teachers that were coming weren't equipped to deal with the opposition they were getting from the Bon Po, who wanted to remain, the rulers, spiritual rulers. So that's another example of integrating.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was someone, the article started out talking about how they went to a yoga class and then the yoga teacher started reciting something from a sutra, and they were like, "What? You ignoramus? Don't you realize that yoga is..." And then, of course, Yeshe is a yogini. So, I mean, that kind of shuts people up, you know.
She's a supreme yogini.
Yeah, she's a very great yogini. And she's a scholar, and she's a powerful woman, and she wields, like you said, the phallic energy, the ultimate phallic energy. And so, I mean, I think that she's a very powerful person to connect with for people who are opening up to other paths or other ways, or people who have found their way into yoga and kind of New Age spirituality, you know, just a little, to kind of give them like, okay, here's a light, you know, like here's a little more, like a guiding light towards something.
She's one of the female Buddhas.
Yeah.
So she's the same as any other Buddha.
Yeah.
It's that, you know, at a certain point, the whole thing of gender is completely transcended.
Right.
Well, there's a White Tara mantra. You may know this mantra. It's pretty well known. But this would be like the mantra for Yeshe Dawa, or White Tara, Wisdom Moon. And this mantra can be freely given to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I use it a lot. I've used it for a long time. And the mantra is Om Tari Tutari Turi Svaha. The Tibetans, instead of saying Svaha, which is a Sanskrit pronunciation, Tibetans a little softer. They say Soha. They don't have that hard, sharp V pronunciation. You can do it either way.
Okay. So Tara.
This is for White Tara or Yeshe Dawa, Wisdom Moon. And the mantra is Om Tari Tutari Turi Svaha.
Om Tari Tutari
I'll give this to you so you can
okay.
read it.
And then I'll listen to it later, yeah.
You can read it when we do it. But this was a teaching I received from the Dalai Lama, along with about 3,000 other people at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium. I think it was in 1996. He gave like a 3-day teaching.
Yeah, he was at UCLA that same year, I think, or right around then.
Yeah, well, he was in Pasadena for about a week.
Yeah.
And I happened to...
That was when I met him. Or that was when I was in a UCLA in the audience. But he gave an empowerment, the second... we went to the empowerment. I guess he was answering questions on the first day, and we went the day that you put something on your head, and you bow, and they do chants, and then they say you received an empowerment. I didn't quite know what had happened, but I received something.
So that's you're receiving the blessing of that lineage to do practices.
Yeah,
that's what it amounts to. It's a nice thing.
Yeah,
and you know they're not holding it back. They're trying to make it available to as many people as possible. Of course, the things that require the Nundro, the 3-year Nundro, I told you, they're not going to give you that.
Right.
But these teachings anybody can do, and they're perfectly safe.
Yeah.
You know, so this was given by the Dalai Lama, and you recite the mantra, but you do it in different chakras. I mean, you do the whole mantra in the crown chakra or the head chakra. You do the whole mantra in the throat chakra. You do the whole mantra in the heart chakra. And you do the whole mantra in the solar plexus chakra, and you do the whole mantra in the sacrum. And there's a color scheme. I've written it down here. So when you can design this any way you want to. Like sometimes I do this as a walking meditation. There's a little lake I walk around, up in Alaska where I live. It's about half a mile around. And while I'm walking with my walking poles, I'll recite the mantra and do this visualization. And I will repeat it 5 times in each chakra. But you could do it however you want. You could do it 3 times or 1 time or, whatever. But basically I visualize that cycle of going up in the back and down in the front. But I start out with the head chakra, and I go Om Tari 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 Swaha, Om Tari 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 Swaha, and I'm visualizing the color white in my head. This is what the Dalai Lama gave us. White in the head, then you do it with red in the throat. Red is, remember, the color of Amitabha, and also the Lord of Speech. So it's really connected to teaching and writing and self-expression, whatever kind of self-expression. It's connected to this chakra. And then when you go to the heart chakra, the color is blue. And then it's gold in the solar plexus, and it's green in the sacral chakra. In Tibetan Buddhism, they only have 5 chakras. They don't mess with the root chakra where the Kundalini is coiled. Lama Govinda gives a very good explanation of that in Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism. And instead of having like the crown and the third eye, they just have one for the head that encompasses both of those. So that's how they reduce the more traditional 7 to 5. They feel it's safer to do it this way. One of the reasons being that if a person prematurely activates the Kundalini energy, that's raw, unrefined, primal energy, and that energy is going to activate and energize whatever's inside of you.
Yeah.
So it's going to act and energize your lower self before it gets to your higher self.
Yeah.
So in order for it to be done safely, some purification of the lower self is necessary as a prerequisite. Another thing that's very different between Vajrayana meditation and the Hindu Tantra, or Kundalini, is that in the Hindu Tantra and Kundalini, you're working with the natural forces as they are. You know, they have particular names for the chakras, they have particular mantras for them, and certain things that will awaken it. And you're working with it as it is as a natural force. In the Tibetan practices of the Vajrayana actually originated in India, but because of the Islamic persecution, it basically was exterminated in India. And if it hadn't gone to Tibet with Marco, the translator, and some of his other teachers, it would have been lost.
Yeah.
But
and then, just as an aside, the story behind Shingon is that it got into China, and then the Kukai came up from Japan, brought it back to Japan, and then the next emperor in China outlawed it in China, which is why there's not much Vajrayana in China. So it's mostly in Tibet and on Mount Khoisan.
Well, with the Vajrayana practice, you use visualization, in other words, imagery and sound vibration, mantra, not to activate the centers as they are, but to shape them, to control the energy. So you don't start out messing with that raw energy, because it's like, if you plug into the electric socket in the house here, it's 120 volts, and you can run it into your laptop with an adapter, and it's friendly and it works. But if you tried to plug it in to the Edison plant, where they've got these huge generators, it would destroy your laptop. It would burn it out, because the amplitude would be more than could be tolerated.
Right.
Well, the Kundalini is like that type of amplitude. That's why a lot of the yogis in India are psychotic. They seek power first. And the teaching is seek wisdom before you seek power.
Right.
Because if you don't have the wisdom, you're not going to know how to use the power in a constructive way. It'll destroy you. It'll activate and empower the shadow part of you. And you'll become a victim of that energy. And there are many people that have been harmed by that. That's also why they say you should only practice Kundalini yoga under a qualified teacher who can guide you each step of the way.
Yeah.
And tell you what to do and not to do. And what to do and not to do includes physical yoga, it includes diet, it includes breathing exercises, It includes mantras, visualization, and the guidance of the guru. If somebody tries it on their own, they're playing with fire. So, this is what Lama Govinda writes in the Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism. He does a comparison. That's why the Tibetan system just has the fire. And once you've acquired the wisdom and you've gained a certain degree of enlightenment, then it becomes safe to activate that energy. Because the vibrations of the mantra will dominate the energy. The higher chakras dominate the lower ones. So you want to activate the higher chakras first. That's the safest thing to do.
Yeah.
You want to activate if you're using the 7 system, the crown, the third eye, the throat, and the heart, before you mess with anything below there. It's easier to activate the lower ones.
Right.
I mean, anybody who's been horny has had their sacral chakra very activated.
Right. Yeah.
It's easy to activate that natural force.
Yeah.
But if it's unleashed and not tamed or not integrated, it can become dangerous.
Yeah.
So it's not intelligent procedure to just mess with that. But people that want sensation and pleasure and they want a quick fix, they'll go to that because it takes more time, discipline, effort, patience to do it this safer way. But this gives you permanent results.
Yeah.
And it's safe. It's not going to put you at risk. Whereas the other way is very dicey. And I'm sure that there's a parallel to this in the Western
the thing
Kabbalistic tradition.
It's done its work. People, second and third generation, Protestant of various forms will have severe blockages and have a sense of not only that this is dangerous but evil, that this is evil down here.
The sexual repression.
And that the love of the heart and be weary of your own mind, don't pay too much attention to your mind, but stick with God, the heart, and then all of this is just your gross human nature or evil or the devil's down there. And so I hear shades of that in the idea of the Kundalini being very, very dangerous. I mean, it makes sense to do things step by step. I tend to, I'll introduce the idea of the bandhas, which traditionally was supposed to not be taught to anybody, but I teach it to my students in yoga classes at Crunch Fitness. And everybody does. It's public information now. So that includes activating the pelvic floor and alongside the belly in and up and the throat and allowing energy to flow. And to my mind, I've never seen anybody light up and become psycho, from starting to exercise the bandhas and to circulate energy. And we do focus very much on all the chakras. In my personal classes, just to go off on this aside, because this is related, I bring them in, we go Om Ah Hum, we sit around the statues and things, and then we go to where we're focusing on activating the pelvic floor on the exhale and allowing the energy to move up the spine, and then we relax for the inhale and allow the energy to move down the front, and that's the first step. Then we move up to the sacrum and shine golden light into the sacrum and connect with the beings that reside there and be grateful for them and have a two-way connection. And then from that foundation, we start to move up into solar plexus and establishing a healthy sense of confidence and not an exaggerated sense of ego, but not like we do in the West or in our misinterpretation of the East, crushing the ego underfoot in the sense of the ego as the solar plexus, the individual temporary identity of opinions and ideas and action and digesting food. And then we move up into the heart, having all of this established, then we can really love without having to worry about all this stuff down here being this shadowy unknown thing we're going to work with in the higher grades. And then from there, moving in, and this is of course what my dad raised me on, was this particular working. And then the hung, and then the third eye with the E, and then the Om with the top. Then after that we go into the temple and we do the middle pillar, which starts at the top. and with the Ehyeh, then the Yod He Vav He Elohim, which I've always took to be a little bit out of touch with the nature of reality and the physical universe. What's called in Hermetic Kabbalah the physical universe, as if it were this thing that you could like separate out from everything else, where we're working with being grounded on the ground and circulating the light first coming up from the earth, being much more grounded. So we do those two practices in the same.
Well, that sounds like it's pretty safe. It sounds safe to me.
Okay, I guess I don't know what it is that's unsafe.
You're starting out with Om Ahum.
I think I've never practiced the
so you're starting out
the
with
Kundalini awakening then, because I don't know. I mean, is there some I've heard that
there's a school of yoga,
Kundalini yoga.
The Sikh religion goes in for that quite a bit.
Oh, okay. I have a friend who's a Sikh.
And that if someone operates within that system, they're going to be pretty safe.
Oh, okay.
Because but it's if somebody experiments with it on their own and they're trying to get power.
Right.
And it has a lot to do with what your motivation is.
Yeah.
For doing the practice. And the other thing it has a lot to do with is what's in your unconscious. So that's a very individual thing. Different people have different things in their unconscious. And for some people, there's very little risk. But for somebody that's got something in there that they're not ready to face, it could
maybe
be
they've been
dangerous.
holding it in the closet and keeping the door locked and shut, and you throw it open.
Or particularly somebody that's been sexually repressed and has succumbed or been influenced by that toxic Christian belief associating the creative life force energy with the devil,
and then maybe also having been molested by the priest, and then you go straight to awakening the Kundalini. Yeah, you want to work with other things first.
That compounds it.
Yeah.
Well, if there's a lot of rage in the unconscious, that's going to get energized, and it's going to come out, and it's going to take control of the person. They're not going to have mastery or control over it.
Yeah.
But it depends on what cards you're playing with.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's in our unconscious
until we look.
We find out.
Yeah.
So it's very much an individual thing.
I feel like lately I've been going through a process where a lot of rage has been coming out, but I have been able to control it.
You're ready for it.
Yeah, and reel it in, see it for what it is, and not allow it to mess up my life.
You can transmute that energy. It's an alchemical process.
Yeah.
But that energy that's in the lower chakras is energy that we need, because that's the raw energy out of which we're going to transform our consciousness.
Yeah.
Without that energy, we won't transform. But the energy has to itself go through the transformation process.
Yeah.
As our heart evolves and we become more loving, that integrates it.
Yeah.
That integrates.
That makes sense.
So, Lama Govinda is being very cautious, because when you pass something on to somebody else, you have a responsibility for what results they get.
Yeah.
And if it's done irresponsibly and there's bad results, then you are karmically responsible.
Right.
But this thing that you learned from your dad, I'm sure it's very safe.
I feel like when I told that story about Yeshe and when she was attacked, and the person I told it to later came back and said that I had traumatized her by telling her about that, and that she thought that this was a horrible religion that I was describing. I felt like I had done wrong. I felt like now I need to clarify the teachings of Yeshe, because I opened my mouth a little and the wrong thing came out, or maybe the right thing. Maybe that's towards something else.
Well, there's something in her that needs healing.
Right.
And you activated it into her consciousness.
Right. But she got nothing but the phrase "forgiving the rapist." Like that was the only thing that she took, and then
and applying it to herself.
Yeah.
And she's probably got a tremendous amount of pain, guilt, and anger.
Right.
That she's carrying, a heavy burden.
And rage.
And rage.
Yeah. Not in the place to be thinking or talking about.
She has every right to that.
Yeah.
Well, she's not at a place where she's ready to forgive. Forgiveness is a process.
Right.
And just like the grieving process, you have to work through the stage of claiming your hurt, getting in touch with all your pain.
Yeah.
And the stage of self-blame and guilt. And then the stage of poor me, I'm a victim, feeling helpless and hopeless. Then the victim anger stage, I hate that son of a bitch, I want to kill him, where you're in rage. And then the healthy anger stage, where you take the focus off of the perpetrator and you use the energy of that anger for self-protection in the future and to do things for yourself to make your life better now and in the future. And then eventually you come to the acceptance stage.
Yeah.
And then you have to do, well, what I've been doing a teaching on this actually. You do what's called a bubble meditation, where you visualize yourself in a bubble. And if I do this for Christians, so you visualize Jesus is in the bubble with you. He's the master of forgiveness. And you ask him to help you work on forgiveness. It's a healing process. It's not just done to accommodate the other person.
Right.
But as long as we carry
it's
desire
for us.
for revenge, we're carrying a toxic emotion in our soul that's poisoning us.
Yeah.
And it will affect all of our relationships, and it will block our spiritual growth. It'll prevent us from being free, because the event that hurt us is in the past, but we're still living it in the present, and we will continue to until the healing takes place.
Yeah.
So this healing process is very, very necessary.
Yeah.
So the 5 steps are something you have to work again and again.
You don't
and again.
rush. You can't rush to the 5th step. Yeah.
Well, no, you certainly can't.
Yeah.
And well, if you want me to, I'll give you a rundown on this. So you do a couple of rehearsals before you take on the thing that you're having trouble forgiving. So you're there, and you're in the bubble, and you've got your spiritual helper. If you're a Christian, it would be Jesus. If you're a Buddhist, you can have Yeshe in there with you. Whoever you want.
Yeah.
Whoever you want. And you ask them to help you work on forgiving. And so then what you do is you think of someone that you have a personal connection to in your own life, that you have a positive relationship with. They could be living or dead. Like it could be your dad, say, or your mom who passed away, or it could be someone right now, that you're involved with or whatever. But overall, you love the person, they love you, it's a positive relationship. The energy is positive. You visualize them coming to you in this empty space in your imagination, in their bubble. These bubbles are transparent. So their bubble comes right up and touches yours. And you're looking them right in the eye. And you say hello to them. And then you start talking to them. And you could do this out loud, or you could do it just mentally, non-verbally, but in your mind. But you talk to them, and you think of some time in the relationship you had with them that they said or did something that hurt you, that disappointed you. And it may have been unintentional on their part, or it may have been intentional. Doesn't matter. It hurt you. And you bring that up. You remember it. You bring that up, and you tell them what occurred, what they did. And notice how you feel now about it. Remember how you felt then. Tell them how you felt. And you might want to briefly go through those steps. Getting in touch with your pain, claiming your hurt, how you felt. And then, did you blame yourself? Because often, particularly when you're a child, children will blame themselves. They idolize the adults. And so they think, well, I deserve this. I did something wrong. It's my fault. So they'll have self-blame, even though they don't deserve the self-blame.
Yeah.
It was somebody else's decision to do that. Whatever they did. It wasn't your decision. So you have to get over the self-blame. If a person carries guilt and self-blame, then unconsciously they feel like they deserve to be punished. And they'll look for punishment from somebody else, unconsciously in their relationships. So you have to work through that. Then the victim stage, how you felt a victim. And sometimes a victim, when you're in that stage, you might feel your life is ruined I'll never be the same again. Poor me. Why did they do this to me? I'm no good. I'm a loser. You get depressed and you get discouraged, and you're seeing things through very gloomy eyes. You feel horrible.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're a failure, and but you have to allow yourself to fully experience it in order to process it and work beyond it. The only way you get beyond it is by going through it. You never can get beyond it if you try to avoid it. And the normal thing that people do is avoidance. They'll go from the stage of hurt, and they'll skip these other stages, and they'll go right into the victim anger stage and the revenge seeking stage, because that energy makes you feel empowered.
Right.
And you feel like it doesn't hurt. I'm going to kill that person.
Yeah,
or
that makes sense.
I'm going to see them suffer the same way I did. If you have that feeling of hatred and the thirst and desire for revenge, and you're harboring that, and it feels good because you feel empowered. So many people, they're I would say really too cowardly to allow themselves to go through the guilt and the victim stage, because that your ego diminishes when you go into those stages. And you're experiencing pain and suffering. I mean, it's not fun by any means, but then you go into the victim anger stage, and you have to allow yourself to feel all that anger, but you restrain yourself from acting it out. In other words, you allow it to pass through your consciousness. And then you move into the positive anger stage, where you turn that energy around and use it. You talk to the wounded child in you or whatever. I'm going to protect you. Nobody is ever going to do this to us again. And you discover, what led up to it, what are the warning signs, and you use it for self-protection in the future, and then you use it to think of things you can do to make you and your life better. So that's a power. You don't want to suppress it or deny it. You're rechanneling it in a constructive way.
Yeah.
And then finally you come into the acceptance stage. When you're in the acceptance stage, you've fully digested the thing. You've accepted that, this happened, but now it's in the past tense, happened. It is no longer continuing to happen to me. I am no longer suffering the hurt. I'm no longer feeling guilty. I'm no longer the victim. I'm no longer the angry victim that wants revenge. I am doing things to protect myself and to make my life better, and it's in the past. And when you can go through all of that and revisit it and feel at peace with it the whole time, then you know the healing has happened. But as long as you keep feeling any negativity in any of those steps, the healing isn't complete yet. It's in process.
Yeah.
But it's possible to get stuck in any one of those steps and stay there, for indefinite amount of time. I'll give you a handout I have on this.
Oh, yeah.
And you could share it with people.
Cool.
So anyway, you do the first one with someone you have a positive relationship with, and you say to them, after you go through the 5 steps, I forgive you for, whatever it was. And whether it was intentional or unintentional, I forgive you. And then you say, please forgive me for anything that I ever said or did, whether it was intentional or unintentional, that caused you hurt. You ask them to forgive you. And then you feel at peace with it. Then you do, and you can invite them into your bubble if you want to help you with the rest of this work. And this work might take you weeks or months or even longer. Then you invite someone that you do not have a personal relationship with, but that you know was a negative person. It could be somebody from the history books or somebody in the news or somebody, that's a bad person, a serial killer, a rapist, a dictator, a cruel person like somebody like Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, Adolf Hitler, take your pick. Somebody that did a lot of bad stuff. You bring them to you in a bowl, and you face them, and you recite to them whatever you know about the bad things that they did. And, you let them know this was wrong, whatever you want to say to them. But then you say, but I want to forgive you. Or if you feel you're ready to forgive them, you say you forgive them. And on the behalf of all their victims, because you weren't one of them, you work through those same steps. And when you get to the point where you feel at peace with what this person has done, not in the sense that you're saying it was okay. You're not saying it was okay. You're not condoning it. You're not doing that. But you're just accepting it very objectively, like with the mirror-like wisdom of the discriminating wisdom. This happened. We can't change it. We accept that, yes, it happened. It's in the past. And then you tell the person that, and you know what they did this, they were acting out of their own sickness. And you start having compassion for them. Because you know the karma they created is causing them mucho suffering in future, and now you tell them you forgive them. And you're at peace with it. So after you've done that, then you're ready to take on the personal issue with the person now in this life that is hard to forgive.
Yeah.
And you do the same things. We've done in these two rehearsals, and you bring them to you in their bubble, and you face them. And you start reciting to them what they did that hurt you. And you notice where you are. You start out with claiming your hurt. Tell them, get in touch with the hurt. Allow yourself to feel the sadness, the pain, the disappointment. If the person betrayed you, they lied to you, they stole from you, they stabbed you in the back, they embarrassed you in front of other people, whatever they did. You say that. And then you feel the heart, the pain, the sadness, and you express that to them. And then you move into the guilt, and you look deeper into yourself and see if there was any self-blame attached to that. Did I set myself up for this? Did I ask for it? Is it my fault? Did I deserve it? And really search into your soul and see if there's any self-blame or guilt. And then you've got to tell yourself, no, this was not my fault, not my responsibility. I did not deserve it. This person made the choice to do this to me, acting out of their unhealed pain and anger and so forth. And then you move into the victim stage, and you notice how it destroyed your ego, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
And you've tasted the bitterness of defeat for the ego. You felt helpless, hopeless, discouraged, poor me, depressed, and some people stay in that wallow in self-pity for a long time. You have to allow yourself to feel the self-pity, but you sure as hell don't want to get stuck in this step, because your life is just going to come to a rushing halt.
Right.
If you're there and you stay hung up in that, nobody's going to want to be around you, because you're going to be depressing to be around.
Yeah.
And you're going to become a tragedian in the worst sense of the word. You'll see the tragic side of everything in life, and you'll be pessimistic, and you'll have the blues all the time. Well, you pay your dues, you feel your blues, but you process through that. And then you move up from the victim poor me stage to the victim anger stage, where there's this rush of Mars energy, this rush of solar plexus energy or sacral energy, where you feel a sense of empowerment, and self-righteousness and indignation, which is really healthy, but you also feel a sense of anger, rage, and hatred towards the perpetrator. And you want to get even. You want revenge. They deserve to suffer the same way they made me suffer. I'm going to hurt them. I've got to hurt them. I've got to pay them back. I can't let them get away with this. So, you judge them and you want to sentence them and you want to carry out the sentence, basically. So you're either going to arrange for you or for someone else to hurt them. You might be subtle about it. You might be two-faced. And have you ever read that poem by William Blake called The Poison Tree? Well, you should read that. It's about forgiveness and the failure to forgive and how it destroys relationships. The Poison Tree by William Blake. I've got a musical version of it I could play for you if you want to hear it. Anyway, you allow yourself to feel all those horrible emotions. You don't suppress them. You don't say, oh, that's evil, I can't feel that. You are honest with your feelings.
Yeah.
You allow yourself to fully experience and feel all of that, but you do not act on any of it. You control yourself. You restrain yourself. You hold that energy, and then instead of focusing on this shitty person that you want to screw over and get back at, you look back to yourself and you still continue to feel outrage at what they did, disgust at what they did. But you decide to use that energy for self-protection so that no one can ever do that to you in the future again.
Yeah.
And you study the history of whatever happened. I mean, we're speaking very generally here, but in many cases, if it's a relationship thing, you can look back and you can see there were warning signs along the way that could have told you to look out, and you might have overlooked them, maybe because you were so
maybe intentionally
enthralled with the person, or you were having so much fun with them you didn't care, or whatever it was, or you wanted to trust them, whatever it was. So you figure out how you can protect yourself in the future so nobody can do that to you again. Because you notice in people's lives, a lot of times they keep suffering the same disappointments over and over again.
Yeah.
In relationships or in jobs or wherever it is. And that's because they haven't consciously realized what is creating this. So in a way there is a responsibility, if you keep allowing it to happen, or if you keep acting out of the same desire for the same thing and it leads to the same outcome that you don't want, that's a sign that there's something that needs to be altered in who you trust and how you trust them.
Yeah.
Everyone isn't worthy of your trust because a lot of people are carrying around wounds and they want to act out their victim anger on people. Yeah. But they're not conscious of this. So they do it unconsciously. So unconsciously, they identify someone in a future relationship with someone that hurt them in a past relationship. And then they act it out on them. I've had that happen to me.
Yeah.
It's very common. So you use it to protect yourself, and then you examine your life, you examine your conscience, and you think about what are some positive things that I can do for Kess or Edward or whoever it is that'll make my life better. Forget that fool. They're going to suffer their karma. It's not my job to be the executioner.
Yeah.
Let's use this energy to make my life better. And that frees you from being obsessed with what happened and getting even, because that ties you karmically to the person.
Yeah. Remember my dad's old thing about love and hate being opposite sides of the coin of attachment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, certain types of love.
Yeah. Eros, the possessive
I mean,
way.
I talked to your dad about forgiveness, and he was hell-bent not to forgive certain people. And so I just realized, okay, he's not...
Yeah, it probably to him sounded like a Christian thing, and that's kind of I have him and me.
Well, like you said, he's kind of like a wrathful...
Yeah, a wrathful Buddha. Yeah.
And so I didn't, push it with him, because I could tell it was pointless to.
Yeah.
So, you work through this with this person, but when you start out, you might find that you are stuck in one of those stages. So that's as far as you go. And you just say, well, I don't even want to forgive you yet.
Yeah.
And you cuss them out.
Right.
That's where you're at.
Yeah.
So then what you do is you ask yourself, well, could I pray for them? No, I don't want to pray for them. I hate them. Okay, then, could I pray for the grace to be able to pray for them? And then you start doing that. And you keep working at it until you get to the point where, okay, I'll pray for them. I hate them, but I'm going to pray for them. And you start praying for them. And then after you work with that for a while, you ask to pray for the grace to work the process to forgive them. And then you go back and you start working it. And if you're stuck in that victim anger stage, you have to be honest and say, okay, that's where I'm at. I still hate them. I still want them to suffer. I still want revenge. But I'm going to pray for them, and I'm going to pray for the grace to let go of my hatred. And you just pray for that.
Yeah.
And each time you do it, you let their bubble go off into space, and you dissolve the visualization. And then
It doesn't mean you let him out of jail. It just means you forgive him.
Yeah. Well, you're going to forgive them, but it's going to take time.
Yeah.
Because what you're going to do is you're going to go to the full depth of how much this really hurt you. A lot of times, people, I know men and probably women too, they think they're tough and they're strong, and so they minimize and deny how much they've actually been hurt. They don't claim they're hurt.
Yeah.
They deny it. Oh, yeah, they hurt me, but I'm over that now. It's a way of bullshitting yourself.
Right.
So you don't have to go there and feel it. But the healing will not take place as long as we lie to ourselves and we're not willing to have the courage to feel it. The truth of, you're experiencing the truth of your soul. And the truth will set us free. It's one of the great wisdom sayings of Jesus. And the truth he's talking about is the truth of our soul. And that means seeing both the light and dark side of ourselves. That's the truth. And as long as we keep denying the dark side or the things that are not comfortable, and we're basically lying to ourselves, that will keep us stuck in our growth as human beings and spiritual beings. That's why the feel-good spirituality is a recipe for failure.
Yeah.
So we allow ourselves, we might not be ready to experience all of the hurt in one shot.
Right.
So you have to keep going back, doing it and doing it and doing it until you can feel the hurt, process the hurt, you're conscious of it, but then you're at peace with it, and you've actually, it becomes a memory and no longer an ongoing thing you're carrying as a burden. And the same thing with the guilt, and the same thing with the victim stage, the same thing with the victim anger stage. So it gets gradually, the whole thing gets placed where it belongs, into the past, and you're no longer carrying those feelings. They are a memory. You don't forgive and forget. That would be idiotic.
You forgive and remember.
You remember, so you can protect yourself and prevent it from ever happening again.
Yeah.
In a relationship or in your life, whatever it was. You learn from experience. Experience is food for the soul, and that's how we gain wisdom, through learning from the experience. If you forget, then you have to go back and have the same damn thing happen again. Another learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Or you can, many things you can learn from the examples of others, so you don't have to suffer the same thing they're suffering. If you realize what their mistakes were, you don't have to make those mistakes.
I liked my dad's definition of education, or the definition of formal education. Somewhere in it involved to safely transmit vicarious experience so that you can maximize your life choice potential by being able to move forward from the wisdom gained by other people making those mistakes and having those experiences.
They are our teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that make mistakes are teachers for us if we know how to learn from them.
Yeah, or explorers even. Someone goes down a particular trail and they come back to tell you what they found.
Exactly.
Like you could say that's a mistake because they went off the main trail, but maybe they did it on purpose.
And even our enemies can be our teachers in that same way.
Yeah.
So that's the wise thing to do, because it takes a lot of time to learn the lessons through your own direct experience.
Yeah.
And if you can learn it from someone else who's already spent years or whatever going through the process, it saves you the trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's better things to do with your life.
Right.
Yeah, much better things. So, you know the healing has happened when you can go through all 5 of the steps and remain inwardly at peace in your spiritual center. You've accepted and acknowledged it. You bless the person, you forgive them, you let it go, you put it in the past. And you're at peace with it. Until then, we have to keep working the steps. But that's a healing process. And the work of healing, while we're working the process, the higher self or the Christ, the Holy Spirit, is doing the healing for us in the unconscious. It's changing the energy. It's transmuting the energy. So all that energy that was trapped in being stuck on this is freed for positive use to make our life better and to expand our consciousness towards reality. And we've learned more compassion. So it's a win-win for us. The one reason to give forgiveness is for your own peace of mind.
Yeah.
When we refuse to forgive, we continue to keep our own mind disturbed.
Yeah.
Which interferes with our ability to pray and meditate and go deeper. And when you put it in the past, if this person is a real jerk that you had to forgive, and you don't have to ever speak to him again. Forgiving doesn't mean that you welcome him with open arms. That's a choice. If you feel that you guys could work this out and have a healthy relationship, sure, you can invite them back into your life. But if they're just going to keep doing you wrong, you divorce them.
I had one of those where, there was someone I trusted, and then later I felt I had been too harsh with him, or maybe I was in the wrong partially, so he became my friend again, and then he betrayed my trust again, and it's like, okay, that's the third time I'm an idiot.
Well, what Delane, that woman I was telling you about, that used to live up in Lake Arrowhead, that worked with the Course in Miracles, what she says, what you do, she's the one that taught me about this bubble meditation, and the other steps came from a book called The Process of Forgiveness, which is by William Menninger, a Trappist monk who's one of the founders of centering prayer. She said, you imagine a ribbon wrapping around your bubble and the other person's bubble, creating like an infinity sign. And once you've completed the process, if you do not want to reassociate yourself with this person, you visualize a big cosmic scissors coming along and snipping the connection between your bubbles. And then you visualize them and their bubble floating off into space and disappearing, and you and your bubble. And what that does is it severs the karmic tie you have with that person. Since you have forgiven them, you won't have to meet them in a future life or in this life or have anything to do with them, and there'll be no more energy going back and forth on the mental plane or psychic plane between you two. As long as you hang on to a grudge, you are in continual psychic connection and interaction with that soul and they with you. And you will be drawn together because you guys have karma to work out. It might not be in this life, but it'll be in a future life. And basically what you want to do is you want to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Let them go their way. Their karma will be faced and your karma will be faced. And it'll be resolved. But it's not my job to be the judge, the jury, and the sentencer and the executioner of their karma.
Right.
Leave that to the forces of the universe or God or whatever.
I'm thinking of a particular case where there was someone who I feel that I've forgiven, but I take it upon myself to let the world know what he's up to and what my experience was with him.
Well, if you're going to save other people from suffering, you're doing a noble thing.
Out of compassion.
Yeah, you're doing a noble thing. Because if you don't, you bear a little responsibility for the wrong you did.
Exactly.
I mean, like a classic example is this. There's somebody that you know, this is all hypothetical. There's somebody that you know that's a serial rapist or a serial murderer, who kidnaps innocent children and tortures them and, kills them or whatever. Someone that's a monster. And they tried to make you their victim, but you figured out their game before they were able to play it on you, and you got rid of them from your own life. But you know that person's out there, and they're going to keep doing this to other people.
Yeah.
So, are you in a position to kill them or get them arrested or whatever it is? Do you just stay quiet about it and let them go their way and continue doing the evil? Or do you do something that's going to prevent them from doing it?
Right. And could you even do that bubble method and cut the cord with them and let them fade into darkness? Would that even be appropriate if they are out doing bad things? You know they're out doing bad things, and by being quiet about it, you're passively assisting it in a way. You're
allowing it. You're enabling it. Well, what I would say the thing to do would be they would need to be exposed. Well, I think we do have an obligation to protect the innocent, to protect virtue and righteousness. I mean, that's what the Gabura principle is.
Yeah, justice.
We have to uphold truth and justice, freedom, and righteousness.
Yeah.
Virtue. If we're not clear with our conscience, then our spiritual growth will be retarded. So you have to live a righteous life. That's just a fundamental prerequisite.
Yeah.
If a person isn't living a righteous life, the amount of spiritual assistance that they'll be able to receive will be thereby limited.
Yeah.
Of course, we may have unconscious things in us, but if we're sincerely working to overcome that, the grace will be there to help us.
Yeah.
Especially if we're willing to take responsibility for the full truth of our soul, and we're not in denial.
Right.
And we're not misusing our authority, our power, our position to take advantage of others or gratify our false self, our ego.
And that kind of brings to mind the idea of the shadow, the Jungian idea, and projecting the shadow outward on someone else and saying they're the monster rather than being able to admit that.
Yeah, that's the classic thing. We have to integrate our own shadow.
Yeah.
And the shadow doesn't contain just negative things. It often contains positive things too in ourself that we haven't accepted. It may contain gifts and talents and abilities and qualities we have that we were afraid to exercise for whatever reason. Sometimes it might be because, well, if I become that way, then people will take advantage of me, so I'm not going to be that kind and giving.
Right. Yeah.
Because I was hurt the last time I was kind and giving.
Yeah, or the last time I opened myself up in a relationship, I was betrayed, and so now, I'm hesitating because I'm afraid I'm going to be betrayed, and, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm a great respecter of Carl Jung, though one thing I disagree with him on, and I think you'll probably agree with me on this, was he studied Eastern religion and Western religion, and he felt that Westerners should stick to Western religion,
right,
because the Western psyche and the Eastern psyche
are different. Yeah.
And so that it was inappropriate for a Westerner to practice the meditation of the Secret of the Golden Flower, which I started practicing when I came into it. And the being that was contacted was a Western being, but he gave me all the teachings in the book before I read it.
Where I think there's some truth in that is, like, if somebody's raised in a Christian church, it might be useful for them to study Hermetic Kabbalah, like maybe before jumping ship completely into a foreign system that is brand new to them.
I would agree.
Yeah.
A person just has to go with what feels right.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. Everybody's path.
It's true in their heart.
Yeah.
And there are so many choices. There are more choices than ever in the past world, because it used to be you were born in a certain geographical location and your options were determined by that environment.
By your family,
and that was it. Now we have access to a worldwide selection of teachings and practices and traditions.
I've heard it mentioned that LSD can accidentally awaken the Kundalini, and for people who aren't ready, and sometimes people go mad that way.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts about that? Because I don't know if I understand.
Well, LSD is a non-specific psychic amplifier, which means it creates a big psychic opening in a person's consciousness, and it makes things that are in the unconscious come into consciousness. So it depends a lot on what the psychodynamics are, of what's inside the person's unconscious. It also depends upon the environment that you take it in, the set and setting were the two terms that were used. So the set has to do with your mental preparation, your attitude, and your mindset, and your motivation as to why you're taking it, what you want to get out of it. Are you using this as a recreational substance? You're going to go to an amusement park or to a rave, or,
Right.
You're going to go for external sensation and pleasure, sex, whatever, stimulation, entertainment. Are you going to go out in nature to commune with nature and the elements? Are you doing it to seek and search inside your soul, to find truth, to deepen your self-knowledge and self-awareness? So you could use it in a sacred way.
Wow.
You could use it in a worldly way. You could use it in a profane way.
I just gave me an insight about a particular time I
So
took mushrooms.
there's the set.
Yeah.
There's a crucial, and the setting has to do with the actual physical environment in which you do it, and who's there, or if you're by yourself, who you're with. You have to be very careful and mindful about the set and the setting. And this is my opinion. I would not use it frivolously or superficially. And I would be around people that I have implicit trust in, and that I have positive relationship with, mutual respect, and we would define to each other the boundaries of what the experience is, and so forth.
Yeah.
Would I be the only one taking it and the other person not? Would the other person be there as a guide, if I needed assistance to talk to, or there are certain things that you can read to someone that will guide them into a spiritual experience. But it's a non-specific psychic amplifier. Psychedelic means mind manifesting. The Greek term psychedelic means mind manifesting. So it's going to manifest into consciousness whatever is within you. for some people, this would be a very dangerous thing to do. If there's something just below the surface of consciousness that they're not ready to face. Like this anger thing, for example.
Yeah.
If someone's got some victim anger, rage, and hatred that hasn't been healed, it's like Russian roulette. You know, there's one bullet in the gun, and there's 6 chambers. And when you take it, you're spinning the chambers.
Right.
You don't know which time the bullet's going to be in the chamber. And by that I mean which time you can have a bad trip.
Right. Or if somebody's going to say the exact words that someone said when you had that bad experience you're not looking at, you know, or whatever, it's going to bring it all flooding back.
It has the one person said, I think Aldous Huxley quoted this, to fall in hell or soar angelic, just take a pinch of psychedelic. That's kind of a broad outline, you know.
Yeah, it's true. I've experienced that too. And you guide it yourself, which is, I mean, once you get used to it, it's very empowering because you can do it when you're not on psychedelics too, when you realize you're going down a particular road and you can decide to change. But when you're on psychedelics and you're like, why is the trip so bad? Oh my God, why is it getting worse? Oh, why is it even worse now? And it's because of that exact thought process that you just had, where, you know, oh, this is uncomfortable. Let's move over here. Love and togetherness, you know, and then it goes away. And then, you know, but someone who's brand new with some heavy psychedelics, like not understanding that, can easily go down into a bad trip. I've actually done it on purpose before. I've done a lot of psychedelics, but
I would say if someone is considering experimenting, which I did when I was 20 years old, take it seriously.
Yeah.
Prepare for it. Know yourself. Realize that there are many possibilities. Do it in a safe environment. Do not go out in public. And you may have a spiritual awakening. You may deepen your self-knowledge and understanding. You may see things that you don't want to see, but don't fight against it. Remember that you will come down and just go with the flow of it.
Yeah.
And what else would I say? I would say have some good stimuli around you, you know, like some sacred objects that you feel a connection to.
Yeah.
Have someone read something to you that will help you. Focus on your higher self, your better angels. And if you experience something, you know, more of the dark side, realize that this is temporary and that it's a lesson, and it's not going to hurt you ultimately. You're going to come out of it.
Yeah.
But be prepared for whatever. But remember, you will come down. Subjectively, you might be in places where it seems like you're never going to come out of it.
Yeah.
Objectively, you will come out of it. That's part of the archetype of hell, is that subjectively the person is convinced that there's no way out in time or space. That's called the no exit situation.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so hellish. But objectively, there will come an ending to it.
But I took you on a sidetrack.
Yeah. So, we talked about this forgiveness practice, and then remind me if I don't remember to give you the handout.
Okay.
It's in the other room. I know right where it is. Because I did a teaching on this at the retreat center I was at in Amarillo for the retreat staff. And so they made copies, and I have a few leftovers. So, okay, we talked about the white Tara practice. So what you would do, this is a suggestion, if you were going to do a white Tara visualization practice, you would start out by going Om Ahum, doing those mudras. And then if you wanted to do the wisdom Buddhas to invoke that energy, or that mandala, visualizing the colors that go with it, and I've written them down here. Om, Hum, Trong, Hri, Ah. Then you invoke the mandala of the Five Dhyani Buddhas. And then you take your mala, and the mantra is right here, where you see where it says Om Tari Titari Turi Swaha. Okay? So you would just start doing this white Tara mantra, and you begin by visualizing white Tara in your head. You could go once around the mala, doing white Tara, once around the mala doing red Tara in the throat, once around the mala doing blue Tara in the heart, once around the mala doing gold Tara in the solar plexus, and once around the mala doing green Tara in the sacral center. By the way, green Tara is the female consort of Amoga Siddhi, the wisdom Buddha of the all-accomplishing wisdom.
Mm.
Each of those Buddhas has a female Buddha consort. And green Tara goes with Amoga Siddhi.
Okay.
You know, they're all in the Yab Yum position.
The Yab Yum?
Yab Yum, that's the sexual union position of the yoni, and the lingam is the Hindu terms for it.
Right.
In Tibetan they call it Yab Yum.
So like Yeshe and Padmasambhava when she's sitting facing him. Okay.
Yeah, very yummy.
Yab Yum. What?
Very yummy.
Yab Yum. That's an easy way to remember it.
So you would just, you would Om Tara Tatara Turi Swaha, Om Tara Tatara Turi Swaha. Each time you repeat the mantra, you go one bead. Om Tara Tatara Turi Swaha, Om Tara Tatara Turi Swaha. And you don't have to do it out loud. You can, because the main thing about a mantra is doing it in the mind. But if you do it out loud, then it engages the physical body more. It brings it down to the earth plane more. It brings it into Mount Kuth more. So you can do this any way you want to, but just using it, you keep repeating the same mantra, but the visualization simply changes as you move from one center, energy center, and color to the next. You work your way down the front of your body doing it, and then you can do it working your way up the back of the body. And you can just do, like, each time you do the mantra once, you go from one center to the next when you're doing the circle thing.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you can play with it.
Yeah.
Just play with it. Yeah, it's very simple to do, and you can pass this on to, if you have some students that want to get involved with Yeshe Tsogyal, this would be a good preliminary process, because Yeshe Tsogyal is an emanation of the white Tara. So first you get in touch with the source, with Yeshe's spiritual, Bodhisattvic source, white Tara. Or if you want to get in touch with the source of white Tara, then you do Om Mani Padme Hum. Now in Lama Govinda's teaching, the seed syllable for Amitabha is Hri, H-R-I-H. And you notice when you say Hri, that sound pulls energy up your spine.
Hri.
Like start out by feeling Hri in the lower center, and you notice that there's an upward movement. Hri.
Hri.
It comes right up to your throat, from the lower part up to the throat. So, with the puja tradition that I learned, when we do the mantras for the different things we visualize in the puja, we add a Hri on the end of it. So when you do Om Mani Padme Hum, you do Om Mani Padme Hum Hri. Om Mani Padme Hum Hri. And that helps to move that energy up. And Hri is the seed syllable of Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light. So you're bringing Amitabha, which is the source of Avalokiteshvara, or Chenrezig. You're bringing Amitabha's power into the mantra. It makes it more effective. The mantra Om Mani Padme Hum touches on the 6 realms of existence on the wheel of life.
Let me see if I know the gods.
The gods.
The demigods.
That's the color white. And then the demigods, or the jealous gods, that's the color green, because they're green with envy.
Like Yodhe Just kidding. So he says, I am a jealous god.
The warring gods, the jealous gods. Well, the sin of the pure gods is pride. These are the poisons that they have.
Right. These are sentient beings also, right? Not Avalokiteshvara, not Ishvara God. Not like capital G God.
These are the long-lived gods.
Right.
They enjoy a realm of ideal pleasure. Basically what they're doing is they're spending all the money they have in the good karma bank. Enjoying a life of peace, self-indulgence, and pleasure. And they live a long time. And while they're there, there's a bodhisattva playing the song of impermanence on the flute of wisdom to try to remind them that this ain't going to last forever, folks. But while they're there, they're in heaven, and it seems like it's lasting forever, but it's not. Once the good karma is spent, then they go back to the bardo and they reincarnate in wherever their karma takes them next. So the color for the gods is white because they are somewhat purified, but they're still ego because they're self-indulging in ideal pleasure. So the maximum amount of pleasure is what is had in that realm. So we can experience as human beings, we can experience all 6 of these realms. The human incarnation is considered so precious and valuable because for human beings the 6 realms are different psychological states, and we can experience all of them. For non-human beings that are incarnated in the non-human realms on this wheel, they only experience one of the realms. That is, the experience of the realm that they're born in. So their perspective on reality is much more restricted. Whereas, as a human being, you can compare these different psychological states. So symbolically, these things represent psychological states that we experience. So the realm of ideal pleasure, paradise, wish fulfillment, is represented by the color white and the gods, the good karma spenders. The next realm, the color is green. These are the jealous gods, the warring gods. The psychological state is the desire for power and control, and domination, and being competitive. So that's a state in which you're always at war, basically. You never rest. You're always fighting with somebody. Unending conflict because you want to dominate, and they want to dominate, and you're competitors. And of course that's a familiar psychological state to anybody.
Right, and the origin of morality and civilization, according to the Greeks.
And the third realm is the human realm. The color is yellow. And this is the realm of human attachments and desires. We keep going back here to live out our desires. But it also is the most advantageous realm because we have access to all the realms and we can see a bigger picture, of reality. And it's the realm in which you have the best chance of getting off of the wheel, getting liberation. So the teaching Buddha manifests in this realm. I forget what it is that manifests to the warring gods to try to give them a hint. But there's something of the bodhisattva nature that manifests in all these realms.
Yeah.
Now, underneath the human realm, the color is blue, and this is the lower half of the wheel of life. And this is called the animal realm. And it's basically the realm of stupidity and ignorance and of being dominated by instinctual drives and desires. You know, we all have our animal nature, our animal soul as human beings. Then, opposite of that is the realm, it's called the hungry ghost realm. The color is red, and the beings that are incarnated as hungry ghosts are tortured by insatiable desires for thirst and food and sex and appetites that they can't control, and they can never get enough. And these would be some of like your lower astral entities, earthbound souls that will attach themselves to human souls as parasites to try to vicariously inspire you to want to pig out or get drunk or do drugs or screw around or whatever, gamble, whatever their thing is, or to be violent, or so they can vicariously share in your experience while they are vampires sucking off of your life force energy. So that's a realm of major suffering and misery. And in the Tibetan tradition, they do certain sacrifices to offer food and drink to these things to appease their suffering. But it's the basic thing of being driven by your appetites and unfulfilled desires.
Yeah.
Then the final realm, there's more than one of them actually, but the color is black, the opposite of white. You know, it's the opposite of the gods that are in heavenly paradise. This is hell realms of primary suffering, where you're born into a body that can only experience pain and suffering. So it's a realm of torment on every single level, suffering, misery, and hell. They have a hot hell and a cold hell, and basically that's all you experience in that realm. And they have all kinds of gruesome descriptions of, you know, where demons
Lotuses being torn to pieces.
You're being dismembered by demons, but you can't die, and you know you're being tortured. And so it's basically the hell experience. That's the wheel of life. The 6 syllables, Om, Mani, Padme, Mani, Padme, Hum, purifies each of those 6 realms within you when you do the mantra. And then you do the Hari to bring in the Amitabha energy, which is off of the wheel. So basically the Chenrezig / Avalokiteshvara, his mantra is for purifying all these realms of impermanence and suffering. And the gods start to suffer when they start to realize that they're going to lose their paradise. Then they start tripping on, what's going to happen next? Am I going to be born into a hell realm or into a hungry ghost realm? Or I don't want to leave here, you know. It's so nice. But you got it.
Yeah.
It's all impermanent.
So attachment, again, is the thing that causes the suffering.
Yeah, it keeps you bound.
Yeah.
You either want to get away from or stay in. It doesn't matter.
I really loved in the Lotus-born Padmasambhava's description of what you just described, but the way that he put it was that Avalokiteshvara has compassion upon the 6 types of sentient beings, and when any one person says once, Om Mani Padme Hum, in the old book it's Hum, but Hum, of course, is the origin, then all of these 6 states are emptied and they cease to be, and all becomes infinite light. Or I'm using the word infinite light, but it all becomes bliss. And it's just such a
power.
It's because in order to really, it's like if someone says to me, imagine the sky disappearing, I can go, okay, but like I'm not really I'm not experiencing the sky disappearing unless it actually disappears. And so that description I felt very powerfully expresses what you had said, that you release those 6 psychological states, or you free those 6 psychological states within yourself.
When you recite the mantra, you visualize each of those colors, knowing that it represents each of those realms and what's in the realms.
Yeah.
But just visualizing the color, going from white to green to yellow to blue to red to black. Om Mani Padme Hum.
Yeah.
6-syllable mantra. And then the Hri
brings
it's
it
like
up.
icing on the cake, because it brings
Nice.
it up. So you're working to purify the realms in yourself, but you're also doing it for all sentient beings.
Yeah.
Now, wherever Avalokiteshvara is, Tara is, because they're one. Just like Yeshe Tsogyal and Padmasambhava are one. Tara was born out of the tear of Avalokiteshvara. So wherever you can use the Om Mani Padme Hum Hri mantra the same way you use Om Tara Tara Tari Svaha.
One of my Zen yoga, well, it was a Zen master who teaches yoga. He has Avalokiteshvara. He has Canon, which is Avalokiteshvara,
Japanese.
Kuan Yin. But then he has Shiva there, and I was like, he has Shiva and Canon, and so he explained to us that they're both Avalokiteshvara.
Avalokiteshvara is a mighty, mighty being.
Yeah.
Of the supernal triad. And I had an experience once where Yeshe was comforting me, because it was when I was taking care of my dad, and he was in the hospital, and it was shortly before he passed away. He had dementia. He didn't know why they tied him up, because he kept pulling catheters out of his penis and hitting the nurses and pulling IVs out of his arms. He didn't know why he was in there, because he had dementia, and the only thing they could do was tie him down. He had a bladder infection, and I'd gone to see him, and I could see his suffering, and it just tore my heart apart. And he looked at me with this smile and this love, just, I could feel his love, and then he says, "Can you get me out of here?" And I couldn't, because he had to be treated for the infection, but he didn't understand what's happening. And I came home, and I was in the other room there in the dark, with a candle lit, doing centering prayer, and I went into this very deep, silent, dark place in the meditation, and then Yeshe was there, and she contacted me, and she brought me into a room and had me sit down, and she sat down next to me, the form of Yeshe, one of the emanations. And there was somebody else that was in the room too. I don't know who it was, kind of off to the side. And there was like this stage there. And Chenrezig Zig came out on the stage as a Buddha. And he was very large size, and it was like his I could see his chakras. He had like a transparent body. His chakras were like immense. And I could just feel all this power radiating from him. And he said, he looked at me, and he just said that his daughter had brought me there, and that she was guiding me. I don't remember what he said, but he transmitted something to me, telepathically. But the energy that I experienced took me into a altered, higher state of consciousness that was indescribable. And I felt that for the next 2 days. And then like my audience with him was very brief. It was just a few seconds, but quite a bit transpired during it, which was all on a nonverbal level, and I can't articulate it. And then she brought me back to where I was, and I felt very comforted by this. So it was just sort of helping me keep it together, going through this thing with my dad, in his dying process.
Yeah.
But it was just part of her love and mercy and compassion to me that, that she did that.
Yeah.
She was able to sort of introduced me. This is a very incredible being. And Om Mani Padme Hum, or that's how the Tibetans say it, or Padme Hum is the more correct Sanskrit way, is his mantra. And he's considered the guardian of Tibet, and the Dalai Lama is considered his physical embodiment in this world. Funny thing about the Dalai Lama, I wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about him and his teaching. Someone I know who has a psychic ability to see auras on people, she went and saw the Dalai Lama, I think one time when he was at UCLA or someplace like that. I wasn't there. But she said that when she saw him, she noticed when he came out on the stage and he was the Dalai Lama, his aura looked, a certain way. And it was very bright. But then as soon as he started teaching, that aura expanded to a much larger size and it was enhanced many, many times. And it was like at that point that the deity, or Chenrezig, was functioning through him. And then when he stopped teaching, his aura went back. I mean, she said he had an awesome aura, as far as auras go, as, Tenzin Gyatso, as the human Dalai Lama. But during the time when he was teaching and doing whatever he did, he was Chenrezig. And she could definitely see and feel the difference in his aura and the energy that was going out to the audience.
Wow. So. Do you want to do any chanting before we have to wrap up? Or,
oh my gosh.
Was there more you wanted to go over before that?
Well, yeah, I was going to introduce you to the Red Tara.
Yeah, let's do it.
If you want to do the Red Tara.
Sure.
And this is a Red Tara, sadhana.
Oh, cool.
The Red Tara is the embodiment of pristine awareness. And she's directly connected to Amitabha, because she's red. And it was Padmasambhava who discovered the Tara Mandala. The tradition of Tara had existed in India, prior to him. But he discovered psychically a particular opening to it. And the Red Tara practice is a practice that is fairly brief, and it's easy, and it's an open door, it's an open door to pure awareness, I think is what they call it. And it starts out with an invocation of Padmasambhava. And the Vajra Guru mantra. Well, you could read this. I want to show you something. You see it starts out with a
hung.
You see those two little things with a line between them?
Mm-hmm.
Wherever you see that in a text, it means it's a charma.
Oh.
It's one of the texts that was hidden by Yeshe Tsogyal and discovered by a Turton later on. So this Red Tara text was discovered by a Turton, and I don't know exactly when, but it was fairly recently. And then this Turton shared the practice with Chogdu Tulku, who's the one that, he didn't speak any English, but he's the one that designed this. This is a picture of Padmasambhava. And then this is a picture of Red Tara. Somewhere, she's in here. She's in here too, but well, anyway, you could just read this. Well, I'm going to the restroom now.
Okay.
You might want to pause the recording for a minute if you want to, or you could just read the thing out loud.
It says, hung on the northwest border of the country of Orgyan, in the pollen heart of a lotus, you attained marvelous, most excellent Siddhi. Renowned as the lotus-born, you are surrounded by a circle of many sky dancers. As I practice, following in your footsteps, I pray you approach to confer your blessings. O Guru Padma, bestow siddhis upon me.
And then you recite the Vajra Guru mantra. Om Ahum Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum 3 times.
Om Ahom Vajra Guru Siddhi
Padma Siddhi. I'll be right back.
Okay. In the space in front of me, the mother of all the victorious ones, Arya Tara, actually appears, and to her I pray. Now, as I and countless others are lost in the ocean of samsaric suffering, I seek Buddhahood to gain temporary and ultimate happiness for myself and all living beings. For this reason, I take refuge in Arya Tara, embodiment of pure awareness, inseparable from all perfect qualities of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Lama, Yidam, and Dakini. From the depths of my heart I pray, evoking from Tara's forehead, throat, and heart a brilliant surge of rainbow light. As the light rays touch me and all other beings, the poisonous fruits of negative karma, sickness, demonic afflictions, and obstacles evaporate like dew in the morning sun. Merit, wisdom, glory, health, and longevity increase beyond measure. Jedzun Fagma Drol Ma Kied Kien No Gal Kien Kun Sel Sam Don Nur Drub Zod. Illustrious Tara, please be aware of me. Remove my obstacles and quickly grant my excellent aspirations. Om Tare Tam Soha.
So, I'll tell you this practice. What I was thinking of doing was going through it, and you could follow along and read it along with me from that text.
Okay.
I have most of it memorized.
So should we wrap up the recording part and move on to the chanting part, or did you want to talk about this a little bit?
Well, I want to tell you about it a little bit.
Okay.
I'll just have to kind of go through it and tell you, because there's a few, particulars that you won't get by looking at this text. Right. There's actually a companion book that goes with it.
So the text is called Red Tara?
It's called Red Tara, an open door to bliss and ultimate awareness. And there's an introduction. This is a picture of Red Tara here. There's an introduction to it. And
is there a way to tell which one this is? Is this white Tara?
That's green Tara.
Oh, okay. How can you tell?
I can tell because she's in the mudra where she's just ready to get up and go help somebody.
Oh, okay.
She's not in the full lotus.
Padmasambhava is usually in that one also.
That, I forget the name of that mudra, but she's just ready to jump up and go help somebody.
Oh, cool.
Green Tara is very active.
Yeah.
And then the white Tara is always in the Vajrasana, in the full lotus, and she's in meditation. So she's more introverted, this one's more extroverted.
Okay.
There's also like 21 Taras. There's a very rich tradition of Tara, as you can imagine. So, we do the 7-line prayer, which invokes the blessing of Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava. And then, when you start this, you bring Tara, you visualize Red Tara coming to you, and you go like this. And you're pulling her so she's right in front of you. And then you're going to be visualizing from her crown chakra, energy coming to your head chakra, from her throat chakra and her heart chakra. You're in a receptive attitude. Her energy is going to be transmitting to you while you do this practice. And so you're doing this visualization while you're doing it. So there's this prayer for her guidance. The English translation of it is, Illustrious Tara, please be aware of me, remove my obstacles, and quickly grant my excellent aspirations. I'll be chanting that in Tibetan to go halfway around the mala, and then we'll do the Red Tara mantra, which is Om Tari Tam Soha. There's a shorter one than the other Tara mantra. Om Tari Tam Soha. And then, after you finish this, we do this mandala offering. And so, you visualize, this is a mudra, universal mudra. You visualize the universe. You repeat this 3 times.
Oh, there we go.
See, it's a little tricky.
It's similar to the Kali Mudra.
Yeah, so you're creating a mandala with your fingers when you do this, see? So your thumbs and your small fingers, and then your ring finger
Okay, here we go.
is standing upright, and then your pointing finger and your middle finger are connected.
Okay.
Just like that.
Yep.
So that's the mandala that you create for this mandala offering. And there's a little mantra you say when you offer it. And you do that 3 times. And then we recite what's on the page here. And I may need some help from this at some point. Some of my memory's doing. And then you go to the next page and you do another one. And all these things that have those little marks, they're part of a terma treasure that was recovered by the person that introduced this. See, this practice wasn't intended to be done until, say, it was discovered in the year 1850, till 1850 or 1903, or I don't know exactly when they found it. And then there's a blessing for world peace that you do 3 times. This is the Tibetan symbol for Trong. And it also represents Red Tara. When you do the meditation part of this, you visualize this symbol in your heart chakra. You're going to be looking at this, unless I need help.
Right.
I'll just say, pass it to me if I need help. And we repeat the Red Tara mantra. And you visualize it going counterclockwise. Just counterclockwise?
Yeah, from my point of view.
Yeah, from your point of view. You visualize this. With a feminine practice, you go counterclockwise, or feminine deity. If it's a male deity, you go clockwise. You visualize the energy. Or you can visualize the mala going around your heart with her seed syllable, Tam, in it. And then there's some concluding prayers that we do. I know this is a lot to give you all at once.
That's okay.
But you'll have it recorded. So, I'll just start going through this practice with a 7-line prayer, and then you can just turn the pages, and you can read them out loud with me if you want to.
Okay. Do you want me to record or no record?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
They sell this to the general public.
Okay.
Though they're hesitant about people who haven't been initiated into the practice to do the visualization,
Right.
which I've given you. Okay, so start out. And you've got a mala right there if you want to, work with a mala too, doing this. Om Ahum. On the northwest border of the country of origin, in the pollen heart of the lotus. You were born. You were born in the north part of origin, the pollen of lotus. You attain marvelous, most excellent city. Renowned as lotus born, you're surrounded by a circle of many sky dancers. As I practice following in your footsteps, I pray that you approach to confer your blessings. Om Ahung Vajragu Padma Siddhi Hum. Om Ahung Vajragu Padma Siddhi Hum. Oma Hong Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hum. That was I and countless others, are lost on the ocean of samsaric suffering. I'm used to doing this mentally and very rapidly. Now as I and countless others are lost in the ocean of samsaric suffering, I seek Buddhahood to gain temporary and permanent happiness for myself and all living beings. For this reason,
It's okay, you can keep it.
for this reason, I take refuge in Aryatar, embodiment of pure awareness, inseparable from all perfect qualities of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Lama, Yidam, and Dakini. From the depths of my heart, I pray, evoking from Tara's forehead, throat, and heart a brilliant surge of rainbow light. As the light rays touch me and all other sentient beings, the poisonous fruits of negative karma, sickness, demonic afflictions, and obstacles evaporate like dew in the morning sun. Merit, wisdom, glory, wealth, and longevity increase beyond measure. Illustrious Tara, please be aware of me. Remove my obstacles and quickly grant my excellent aspirations. Jetsun Fagma Dramal Chechen Nodal Chen Conselsum Domni Dripsod. Jetsun Fagma Dramal Chechen Nodal Chen Conselsum Domni Dripsod. Jetsun Fagma Dramal Chechen Nodal Chen Conselsum Domni Dripsod. Jetsun Fagma Dramal Chechen Nodal Chen Conselsum Domni Dripsod. You repeat that many times. Then you do the Red Tara mantra many times. Om Tari Tam Soha, Om Tari Tam Soha, all the while visualizing her in front of you, radiating the energy to your three higher centers. Om Tari Tam Soha, 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 Om Tari Tam Soha. I'm just doing a shortened version. Mandala offering. Om Ahum. In the 3,000-fold universe, Mount Meru, the four continents, the minor continents, and the splendor and glory of gods, nagas, and humans, together with their roots of virtue, are emanated as vast, extensive clouds of perfectly pure offerings. I offer them to Tara, Mother of the Victorious Ones, Tram Guru Ratna Mandala Idam Yami. The 3,000-fold universe, Mount Meru, the four continents, the minor continents, and the splendor and glory of gods, nagas, and humans, together with their roots of virtue, are emanated as vast and extensive clouds of perfectly pure offerings. I offer them to Tara, Mother of the Victorious Ones, Tram Guru Ratna Mandala Idam Yami. By the power of having prayed thus from the heart, may the enlightened mind be mastered, and appearances perceived purely as the deity's body. May the meaning of the developing and completion stages be naturally internalized. May conditions inauspicious to the perfect path be pacified, and all conceivable auspicious conditions and aspirations be fulfilled. May the stains and obscurations of non-virtue be cleansed, and harm from other beings and bad dreams be averted. Grant the blessing of protection from the fear of lower existences. May rebirth not occur in the 8 stages devoid of leisure to practice. May all lifetimes be remembered and faculties be clear. May discipline be pure and the mind attend to Dharma. From the ripening of karma caused by delusion, grant the blessing that shields, protects, and conceals. May the malignancy of enemies, demons, and ghostly interferences, the harmful effects of untimely death, epidemics, and illnesses caused by poison, all be pacified and purified, and may the wisdom and activities of Tara be revealed. Om Ahum. In the pure realm of the victorious ones, the spontaneous presence of the three kayas, is she who gives birth to victorious ones of the 3 times, a cloud of inexhaustible bliss of the 3 secrets. I bow to you, O sublime guide of the 3 realms of existence. From now until I reach enlightenment, I rely on you as my sole source of refuge and protection. In accordance with your former aspirations and commitments, do not waver in your compassion. Fully bestow on me your powers, blessings, and cities. Whoever sees me, hears me, touches me, or remembers me. By these four means of liberation, and by the most sublime city, may I be capable of freeing all those connected to me, and may my attainment become equal to yours. Without relying on the power of magnetizing, how could one gain the necessary qualities to care for others? May I influence all those to be tamed, positive and negative, without exception, by inspiring in them the four kinds of devotion. Furthermore, upon mastering positive qualities within a state of liberation, may all beings quickly attain the actual form of the victorious ones, resplendent with the major and minor marks of perfection. Until such time, may we be free from the 8 great fears and from malevolent influences. May such favorable qualities as longevity, glory, and excellence flourish. May the yogas of the 2 stages be mastered, and may we be free from obstacles. In all countries, may disease, war, and famine be pacified. May all beings have bliss, happiness, and engage in the Dharma. May the Buddha's teachings be propagated, and may all beings come under the guidance of Tara, Mother of the victorious ones. In all countries, may disease, war, and famine be pacified. May all beings have bliss, happiness, and engage in the Dharma. May the Buddha's teachings be propagated, and may all beings come under the guidance of Tara, Mother of the victorious ones. In all countries, may disease, war, and famine be pacified. May all beings have bliss, happiness, and engage in the Dharma. May the Buddha's teachings be propagated, and may all beings come under the guidance of Tara, Mother of the victorious ones. Transformation into the wisdom body of Tara. Attachment to ordinary appearances and clinging to my corporeal form subside. From the space of emptiness, my mind's natural awareness spontaneously appears as the brilliant red seed syllable Tam. Instantly Tam transforms into the luminous form of the noble Tara. She is smiling and exceedingly beautiful. Her right hand is in the gesture of supreme generosity and holds a long life vase. Her left hand is in the gesture of the 3 jewels and holds a red upala flower by the stem. Within the petals of the flower are a fully drawn bow and arrow made of delicate flowers. Her garments are made of exquisite silk and draped perfectly in graceful folds. She wears wish-fulfilling jewels and splendid ornaments, as well as a garland of lotus flowers. Half of her hair is in a knot at the crown of her head, half flows down her back. She sits in the posture of royal ease on a sun disk, resting on a red lotus. A full moon appears behind her. The Buddha Amitabha sits on a lotus above her head. She is ruby red. Her glorious rainbow light radiance fills an infinite sphere. On a red lotus and sun disk in her heart, the seed syllable Tam is encircled by the mantra Mala. As the mantra is recited, the mantra Mala begins to revolve. Radiating light from the Mala forms an offering to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. Returned as wisdom blessings, the light is reabsorbed. Then light radiates again to the beings of the 6 realms, dissolving all suffering and transforming everything into the pure phenomena of Tara's pure land. So now we will go around the mala once, reciting the red Tara mantra and doing this visualization as we do it. Then after that, we will dissolve I'll tell you when we get there. We'll go around there once, doing the per mantra and the visualization. Om Tari Tam Soha, 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 Om Tari Tam Soha. So now we're going to sit and resting in emptiness for a few minutes, just doing silent meditation. It says, when you have completed the mantra repetition, Tara's form dissolves into the natural sphere of emptiness. And we say the throat chakra, seed syllable 3 times. Ah, ah, ah. Ah, ah, ah. That's the dissolving of the visualization. Your mind rests in emptiness, the natural state of awareness, for the duration of the meditation session. Then you reappear spontaneously in the form of Tara. So you're identifying yourself with the deity. Appearances are perceived purely as the body of the deity. So everything around you is Tara. Sounds are the speech of the deity, and thoughts are the mind of the deity. This perception of pure phenomena is held as extensively as possible throughout the day. So this is what you do after you emerge from the emptiness meditation. So we'll just abide in the rest of emptiness meditation. I just do centering prayer during this time because it's essentially the same thing. Dedication. Throughout my many lives, and until this moment, whatever virtue I have accomplished, including the merit generated by this practice, and all that I will ever attain, this I offer for the welfare of sentient beings. May sickness, war, famine, and suffering be decreased for every being, while their wisdom and compassion increase in this and every future life. May I clearly perceive all experiences to be as insubstantial as the dream fabric of the night, and instantly awaken to perceive the pure wisdom display in the arising of every phenomena. May I quickly attain enlightenment in order to work ceaselessly for the liberation of all sentient beings. Prayer of aspiration. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas all together, whatever kind of motivation you have, whatever kind of beneficial action, whatever kind of wishing prayers, whatever kind of omniscience, whatever kind of life accomplishment, whatever kind of benevolent power, and whatever kind of immense wisdom you have, then similarly I, who have come in the same way to benefit beings, pray to attain these qualities. The auspicious wish. At this very moment, for the peoples and nations of the earth, may not even the names disease, famine, war, and suffering be heard. Rather, may their moral conduct, merit, wealth, and prosperity increase, and may supreme good fortune and well-being always arise for them. Tara meditation for the dead. From Tara's heart, rainbow light shines forth throughout the 6 realms and the bardo, enveloping the deceased ones wherever they are, purifying their karma and infusing them with Tara's radiant blessing. Their forms become brilliant spheres of light and dissolve into Tara's heart-mind, a realm beyond the cycles of suffering, a realm of absolute purity and bliss. You can meditate in this way during 49 days after the death, dedicating the merit of your practice to the deceased. So, that's Red Tara.
Thank you.
There are more things in here, but that's basically what I do. I don't do everything that's in there.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there's some symbolism in the visualization that I could tell you about. Like the bow and arrow made of delicate flowers that are inside.
I noticed this Tara is holding a flower by its stem.
Yeah, she
But
typically does that.
Doesn't have the bow and arrow. Yeah.
No, the bow and arrow is unique to
Red
Red Tara. And the bow and arrow represent skillful means and wisdom. They symbolize skillful means and wisdom. And she I've had her appear to me at different times when I've been doing this practice in different forms. Like I've seen her with blonde hair, but often she's Oriental, but sometimes she looks Caucasian. And she can manifest in any form she chooses to, like in your dreams or in your vision, when you're doing the prayer. So the idea of this practice is just to keep her with you all the time. And during the day, you can just recite her mantra, Om Tari Tam Soha, and visualize that energy rotating counterclockwise in your heart center as you go through your day. It's a very simple, easy mantra.
It makes me think of sometimes, I mean, not very often, but when I get into a certain state and I'll find myself crying literally for the suffering of the world. My mom, when she was working with the Golden Dawn system in the Practicus grade, was working with the Isis God form. And she was driving on the freeway in Isis God form. And for the first time, because she always was, would succumb to road rage and be like, screw that guy, and I hate that guy, and good thing I don't have a gun, But in Isis God form, she found herself realizing that there was an immortal soul in each car and in each person, and she had this overwhelming feeling of love for everyone on the freeway, and she started to cry.
Yeah, so she was experiencing the consciousness of the deity.
Yeah. It makes me think of Tara being the tears of Avalokiteshvara, who weeps for the suffering of all sentient beings.
It is. It's the same thing. There's all the female goddesses are connected in all the different traditions. Like there's a very interesting book. It's called Longing for Darkness. It's written by a woman named China Galland. And she was doing this Red Tara practice, but she also discovered a connection between Tara and the Black Madonna that the Christians worship.
Interesting.
Yeah, she went to this place in Nepal where Tara images were growing out of the rocks, where people had done this practice a lot. And then she went to a place in Poland where the Black Madonna was growing out of the bark of trees from people dedicating their prayers to her.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all of this.
Thank you, Kess Frey, for being our guest on the What Would Yeshe Do podcast. Special thanks to the singing nuns at Chi Gong for providing the music you're hearing right now, as well as to the Buddhist monks of Maitri Vihar Monastery.
Special thanks to Kess Frey for being our second guest on the What Would Yeshe Do podcast. In a few months, I am planning to travel to Nepal and Bhutan, India, and hopefully into Tibet. So I'm going to be getting some good interviews there regarding Yeshe and Tibetan Buddhism. And soon I will be interviewing Chering, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Bhutan. He's going to be showing me around that beautiful country when I arrive there sometime next year. One thing I've learned in answer to the question asked by the name of this podcast, what would Yeshe do? One thing she would do is turn into a tiger and fly to a temple called Tiger's Nest that's on a cliffside in Bhutan with Padmasambhava on her back.
Thank you all for tuning in. Until next time.